Welcome in. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome to Between Two Bellsprouts, the weekly show where Jiggly and his Bellsprouts attempt to talk about things going on in the world of PvP and Pokemon Go generally. And we are joined this week by, I believe, as many guests as we've ever had on one episode. So this is, it should be jam-packed. We're going to have to see how many of them can stick with us the whole time. But we are talking about, is Pokemon Go in fact making strides toward being an esport? What does that even mean? Do we care? How do we feel about it? All these things. And the fact that tomorrow we are all going to be looking at what I think most of us feel like is going to be a significantly different meta than we have seen since the beginning of the game, because we have been used to Azumarill and Altaria and Skarmory being staples since essentially day one. So there is more than just a little bit to unpack. But we are joined, of course, by Alyssa Rose and Scientist D. At some point, I think we will have Max. He's on the screen anyway. We are joined by guest BattleBill, who you probably know from Twitch and I believe YouTube before that more prominently, right?
Yes,
is that
sir.
where you got started? And
Up.
we've got MJGettit. Also, we've shortened it to MJ. He's worried that somebody isn't going to be able to follow the full written out words scrunched together. So he managed to take down the Specialist Cup draft tournament. Well, was that the full description of it? It was the Specialist Cup draft tournament that you guys did today, because that was the first time I have seen Specialist Cup shoutcasts, and it definitely looked like it was quite an involved tournament beyond the rest of them. And the guy you see on screen, let me just get that was my fault for leaving a dangling question out there. But we got AKADJBlaze, who's going to also help us because he is well versed in the ways of esports generally. But let us waste no time getting to our tournament victor today, MJ, and find out what the story was with that tournament. I did watch the cast, but I want to know a little bit about the background. What got you interested into it?
Well, what got me interested was, I don't know, I'm a competitive, like a really, really competitive battler. I'm always looking to fight strong opponents. So Dr. Pants put it on Twitter that he was for people to try out this new format. And at first I saw it and I was thinking, okay, so I just pick a class and I battle other people who's going to be in that same class. Turns out, no, you're battling other people who chose a different class. And I think that back in November, late October, early November, tournaments, I did well enough to get an invite to the finals, which was today. And it was me, Laminate Stasis, Stefix, and Drewsome. We were all in the finals, and we had our draft tournament, which is where you draft between the class that you don't want your opponent to use, and they'll ban classes that you don't want to use, and they'll pick the class that you want, and you have like 10 minutes to decide to make a team. And then after that 10 minutes is up, you have to show your teams and then schedule your battles to happen after that. So that was pretty fun. The whole concept of it is actually pretty amazing, because there's mind game. There's a game inside the game, like the battle that me and Laminate Stasis had, like on my favorite battles of all time. It's I'm trying to think of a best way to put this. It's chess and Pokemon put together, but amplified by about 10 or 12 more stuff. If that makes sense.
Well, let's back up one step. I think many of our viewers probably are already familiar with what Specialist Cup is, but the tournament you had today was kind of like you said, there was more of a layering going on, because I think some of the earlier tournaments you did with Specialist Cup, it was basically just pick a class and whatever the limits of that class were in terms of typings, or exclusions, then you could make a team with that, and you kind of just set it loose in a standard sort of Sylph style tournament. But in this case, kind of the steps that you were describing just made it more of a layered kind of strategy where, you know, we're all familiar with the idea that in a lot of these tournaments, you've got the ban rounds, you've got the draft rounds, and how those all go. But it seemed to me that there were a lot of things that set this one apart in terms of, first of all, you could ban entire classes was the first step, right? And then you would ban individual Pokemon, and all of this took part in sort of a condensed time frame. So it wasn't like you guys were sitting there and you had like a war room full of people and you were you know, trying to figure out for hours, you know, what the best ban was for a draft. I mean, this was happening fairly quickly, I take it, and you were really relying sort of on your already accumulated knowledge of the way that this whole Specialist Cup meta existed. It was almost like a meta, if you will, right?
Right.
And so how many tournaments had you taken part in before this one to sort of build that knowledge?
I did, I think, 3 Specialist Cup tournaments, and then just to build off the knowledge off of that, I just used like my other past Sylph knowledge from different formats and cups to basically be able to build my team and know what it is I want to go into. I also had some practice battles in the Specialist Cup with some people in the Discord just to like get used to which Pokemon can do what and kind of have a feel for what I wanted to go for.
And if you had to, I know it's pretty abstract, but if you had to describe kind of the difference in your method of thinking about building a team in this meta versus another meta, what would you say was kind of the basic approach you took that might have been different?
Say that again. My internet connection was cutting out.
Oh, that's okay. It's kind of a meta question or a little bit off the wall question, but just, it's obviously a very different meta and a very different format, but how would you describe kind of the difference between taking part in something like this versus taking part in a Sylph meta? I mean, probably the first thing that jumps out to me is just the fact that there's no PV poke rankings, there's no solved metas, there's not as many people kind of, you know, putting their teams out there to share. Like, it's your own thought process, right?
Right. It's your thought process. It's basically you have to know how you play. So, like, I played the beauty class all season long, which was basically water, flying, and fairy. And on the stream today, you might have heard, I can't remember his name, but he said that I'm really fond of the Azu Altaria core, which they're both water and flying and fairy. But more so, I was comfortable with Swampert. Swampert's my best Pokemon, my favorite Pokemon. And I just played around that. So it's kind of like, I know how I like to play. I know how I want to play. Maybe take a risk every now and then just kind of hope it works out for the best. But I also have to like keep in mind, okay, just string together a loose enough team that can cover all the weaknesses in a soft countery kind of way, so that you're not boxed in to say, if I'm running nothing but poisons and all of a sudden a confusion user comes out, I'm dead.
Right. And was there a certain thing that were you able to look at the classes sort of when it started out and you were able to easily identify which one fit kind of your play style, or was it more just the case of you can make a team that fits your play style within any of them?
I looked at the classes, and honestly, instead of looking at the ones that I felt could fit my play style, I looked at the ones that were just like, okay, safe countery team around. So Warlord and Ranger, those two I'd never even thought about running. Coincidentally, I'm running Warlord in the Ghost Stadium. Specialist Cup just to be like, hey, I'm trying something spicy. But I saw Scientist, and at first Scientist, which is electric, steel, and normal, it was like, okay, well, there's nothing but steel types. There's no real good electric types outside of maybe Stunfisk. So I didn't at first to give that any thoughts, but then as I sat down on PvPoke and started looking through the rankings, that's kind of where you can use PvPoke to look at what all Pokemon are there. And I was like, oh, okay, so there's Lantern, Galvantula, Emolga can be good in certain situations. So I would say Scientist, Beauty, Rogue, and maybe Mystic, although I'm not really comfortable with the 3-turn confusion moves with all this lag that's happening in the world, you know. So those 3 and maybe that 4th one were the ones I was the most comfortable with. I just went with Beauty because, again, Swampert, my favorite. I can work around that. I've studied that Pokemon inside and out. I know how to play with it, and I know the spicy picks that I would have to use to, well, not even spicy picks, just like off meta picks that can counter some of the things that will hard counter Swampert.
Right. And so as it came out, that class was banned, right?
When I faced Stasis, it was I banned Beauty.
Oh, okay. You decided that you were going to ban. Now, was there a specific thought process there in terms of why you banned the one that you're most comfortable with?
We both played Beauty.
Oh, okay.
That was straight cut and dry. We both played Beauty. I didn't want to give him the opportunity, and like during that ban and Hiker, I kind of figured, okay, I need to get rid of Beauty because either he's going to sit back and take Rogue, even though I had first dibs on what class to have, or he was going to take Beauty himself. So I was like, let's just take that off the list, because I already had in my head that against anyway. And with the fairies in PvP, if I was to run Rogue, which is dark, poison, and ice, Charm still chunks just about everything in the game that isn't Bastiodon, so might as well get the whole typing out the way, and somehow he managed to still sneak a fairy in there against me.
And so what class did you end up with, and what was the team that you actually settled on?
And for both the semifinals and the finals, I ran Rogue. Semifinals against Stefix, I ran. He banned Abomasnow, Sableye, and Venusaur. Oh, Rogue is, I said it, Dark, Ice, and Poison, right? I said that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he banned Abomasnow, Sableye, and Venusaur. And because he was running Hiker, I was like, which is rock, ground, and fighting, instantly, because I'm running a Rogue team that has poisons on it, Gallade had to go. I was not going to mess around with that confusion, get Gallade out, get rid of G-Fisk and Bastiodon, and then I built a team from there. And that's where I came up with Ivysaur and Quillfish, along with Toxicroak, Golbat, Frostlass, and Alolan Ninetales. It was really just with Stefix, it was just the Ivysaur and Quillfish show.
And how long did you have to throw those together? How long did you have to make these decisions?
10 minutes.
And was it something that you felt like you were fairly confident as you were going through making the decisions, or was it something where you're just kind of like, I'm doing my best and hopefully it works out?
Well, I knew I was going to have Toxicroak on the team. When I got through the bans and he was still running his Hiker team, I was like, okay, he didn't ban Toxicroak. Toxicroak has to come. And plus, I got rid of the Glaze, so nothing really in that class could stop Toxicroak unless somehow he decided to bring Wishcash, which he did. When Venusaur got banned, I was like, okay, next best thing is Ivysaur. Stick with the poison typing. Golbat, not too many consistent rock type Pokemon out there. Some good rock type attackers, so like I'll take my chances there. Frostlass and Ninetales just because I needed something to scare off the ground maybe, and then Quillfish, that I actually never played with the semifinals. I've been beaten by Quillfish so many times that I kind of was like, okay, if I'm going to come with a water type, if I got to use a water type, I'm going to use this water type that always beats me. And I was like, well, water gun, fell stinger, aqua tail will do for now. And turned out it actually ran away with it for me. So
I'm assuming that the draft process was fairly similar in comparison to other drafts I've seen, where you draft all 6 mons and then you decide what movesets you're going to run on it, and you're looking at your opponent's team as you're doing that, right?
Well, actually, what it would be is we go through the ban process, and then afterwards we would like go disappear for 10 minutes and we'll make our own team. So we didn't really have a draft. It was just the banned classes and mons were part of the draft, and then after that you guys, it was a complete black box situation where you didn't know what 6 mons you were going to be facing, but except that they would not include the banned ones. Right.
Okay. And once you saw the teams come up, did you feel confident that you had a good matchup lined up, or did you feel like it was going to be difficult?
Okay, so with StephX, I really felt like I had a good enough team to where I only really had to switch out one Pokemon in both the matches. It was best of 3. It wasn't like Silph where you had to play all 3, best of 3. So once you won 2, match was over. So StephX, when I saw his team, I was like, okay, lead, Ivysaur, in the back, Quillfish, probably do something in the middle, but I'm basically going to rely on those 2. Against Laminate Stasis, I told you he snuck in a fairy. He snuck in Shadow Mawile. And my team against him was Umbreon, Venusaur, Sableye, Quillfish, Piloswine, and who's my Alolan Muck. Only Quillfish could stop his Mawile from running town on me. So the fight part for me, because
hold on one second. You've been cutting up a little bit, but you were cutting up pretty significantly there. Don't want to miss what you're saying. Go ahead.
Oh. Okay. Well, I was saying, did you catch the part where I said with StephX I knew what I was doing?
Yes.
Okay. So then with Laminate Stasis, since he brought the Shadow Mawile against my team, it was like, okay, if I don't catch it with the Quillfish, I'm dead meat to that Mawile. That Mawile is going to go to town with me on me, and he had Galvantula on his team too. So it was like, I'm really skinning the cat here, coming in here with like not just Quillfish, but a Piloswine. Like, tell me the last time you've seen that outside of maybe a Stray Ferocious Cup.
Right.
Against him was probably where I wasn't as confident until after the first game. After the first game, I was like, okay, I think I know what I'm going to do for the next game. And that one, even though I knew what I was doing, still was very close.
And the ultimate result, did you take the first 2 and you didn't have to play the third? Is that what the result was?
Yep. That's what happened. I won 2-0 in the semifinals and the finals, and thus became champion. Although they were close and tough battles.
Right. So a lot of people, when they're criticizing or evaluating metas, they, look at them, they say, this is a safe swap meta. This is a win the lead meta. This is it's important to preserve your energy in this meta. They come up with their analysis of what matters the most. And, people always say they hate the RPS sort of metas. So on one hand, Specialist Cup would seem like it's the opposite of an RPS meta because of the way you build teams. But would you say that a lot of the who wins and loses is decided by the time you see how the teams match up, or do you think that it's equally divided between team selection and battling skill?
I think it's certain classes. It will be okay. It's rock, paper, scissors. But maybe if you're strategic enough, or if you know how to play certain situations, you can get yourself out of. So, like I'd say, Ranger is, I think, what, flying, bug, and grass. And instantly I look at that and go, oh, if I got an ice type or a fire type, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing that class can do. Maybe the off Mantine or Pelipper, there's nothing that you can do. I prepare for that, no big deal. But I would say outside of maybe 2 or 3 class interactions, everything is pretty much based off your knowledge, how you play the game, and if you know like certain move counts and matchups. And sometimes it just comes down to dumb luck.
Right.
So I can't discount that. Sometimes it's just straight up dumb luck. Like you live a power whip that you didn't expect to live, and oh hey, okay, I'll take that.
And so when you compare this to other metas in terms of your own success, have you previously had a lot of success in Sylph, in GBLs, in one or the other, but not both? What's been kind of your style or your path before? Have you been solid at everything?
Say that again. You cut out there.
I'm just asking what was your progression before, or sort of your style of battling? Were you big on doing Sylph specifically, on doing GBLs, on doing both? Are you fairly good at both, or do you do better in one than the other?
I think I do much better in Sylph than I do GBL, and only because of the team comps. Like I like being able to see somebody's team and being able to like, okay, guess how they do well. GBL, GBL, I honestly look at and just go, okay, once I hit a certain rank where I can get the guaranteed TM, I'm playing for fun. Don't really care after that. Maybe make a run for a higher rank, maybe not, no big deal. But Sylph, the inner competitors comes out with me because I can actually see everybody getting a rank and me wanting to be the best of like this or even the country.
In what, or the country? Sorry, I didn't hear.
I said just being the best in like in my city, in the state, and in the country.
So I think that our other guest, one of our other guests, BattleBill, I'm thinking in general that you probably take a different perspective in terms of competition. You're probably more focused on GBL, and I assume especially so because of how heavily you are into content creation. What is your feeling in terms of what kind of battling you enjoy most and what you spend the most of your time doing?
So I enjoy both of Sylph and GBL. A lot of the reason why like the main focus goes in the GBL for me is because of the content creating, especially just because the ease of access is there for GBL, where you can do your 5 sets and live stream them or record them on your own, put them on YouTube. I do believe there are different skill sets required to be good at both Sylph and GBL. I know there is a randomness that people like to uses their reasoning for not liking GBL, and I can understand that. But there does still require like a thought process going into building your team comms, making sure you're trying to cover the entire Great League meta. There are matches where it's going to be rock, paper, scissors, and you're going to either win that way or lose that way. But that also does happen in the situations when like you're playing out Sylph matchups, even when you're like reading your opponent's teams. And I really enjoy Sylph. I really miss it. It's really upsetting that like this past year has been the way that it's been to limit us from being able to take part in more Sylph tournaments. I personally took off season 3 because when COVID had hit, I tried like to continue with season 2 and get into it because I was always big into Sylph the first season, the second season. When I started my YouTube channel, I wanted to put out like content on Sylph and see how I can like help grow that part of the community through my YouTube channel. But then doing the tournaments remotely, doing them from home, it really just takes away an aspect of enjoyment that you get from like seeing people in person. That made me really big into Sylph.
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely a commonly shared opinion that the social aspect of it is a huge part of it, and I can understand that. But and I want to say you are here, and we had you booked to come on before we specifically were knowing what we were going to talk about, but it became fairly evident that we have got things happening in the esports scene, if you will, and you are a member of Team Rebel. And Team Rebel, I think, has been building up quite a list of people, but I'd be lying if I said I could actually rattle off the list, because it seems like mostly they're coming off in individual tweets, and I don't know that I've seen like the full team roster or anything. But how did you become involved with it, and what are your thoughts of kind of this nascent scene we have that, you know, some people have their doubts that it can grow into anything, and other people feel like this is just about to pop off?
So there's a few questions in that. So if I forget to not answer everything, please remind me and I'll get to answering. But how I got involved with it to start was, well, I saw first with the Mazer announcements, with Panic signing to Mazer, with Gucci Gang signing to Mazer, and those other content creators, Speediest Chief, Rise, and whatnot signing there. And the thought of it really excited me, to be honest. I was really like amped to see fellow content creators putting in that effort and being recognized for their hard work in the form of an esport team wanting to add them onto their roster. And as some time had gone on, I'd like consider the thought, thinking about it. I wasn't sure like where I wanted to necessarily take my my talents per se. But,
all right, LeBron.
So Inc., the person that runs and owns Rebel, put out a tweet relatively recently, maybe a week or two ago, saying that he wanted to add some members and start an esport team for Rebel. And that was something that I wanted to hop on, because I don't know, it's a personal thing in me to want to be like the person that kind of like helps start something and build something from the ground up. Like I thought it was amazing that Mazer already had signed multiple people, but I wanted to kind of like, you know, go my own way. I don't know how that might be taken or whatnot, but I'm always a fan of competition, and I want to see other teams continue to being built. So I wanted to make sure like I was on the next wave of that happening, and that was in the form of Rebel. So he posted his tweet, I DM'd him, we had a conversation, we chatted over Discord. It was like, I guess kind of like an interview type process. We were just kind of getting on the same page with what the expectations were, and my thoughts aligned with his, and we decided to make it an agreement and make it a deal. And then we continued the conversation trying to figure out who we should add on to the team. And as that conversation developed, we had decided on certain members like Country Nerd, King of Charmanders, and right now Tiny Boy. Those are the 4 members that are making up the Rebel team. And that's where we're at right now. We're still in the process of deciding who else we'd like to be adding on to the team. But I forgot what the other parts of your question were. But that's how I became a member of Rebel. Sorry.
Well, how do you feel about being on, you know, a team and part of this kind of, as I said, like nascent scene where, like, you know, a lot of people have their doubts that this is going to be something, and a lot of people really feel like, you know, it's on the verge of being something. You know, is it exciting? Are you kind of uncertain about this? What are you thinking about all this?
So I'm really excited for it. Obviously, or I wouldn't have like signed on and like tried to add on to this space and the size of the potential teams growing in that direction. But the way that our team is looking at it is we want to be able to put out from a content creator space, which is why GBL is so important. But at the same time, GBL still has its issues in game, still has its issues with lag and whatnot from battle to battle. And the big thing that I think would help grow the potential esport team is Sylph or tournaments similar to Sylph, and getting that in-person vibe back, I think, is huge. That was something that me and Ink and I had discussed when we were first like chatting and figuring out how the tournaments would go about. I think that at the end of the day, the only thing holding back Pokemon Go from becoming a legitimate esport is the fact that there's lag. It's short and simple. If the game was running smoothly, I think there's a huge competitive aspect, whether it be in Go Battle League or in Sylph. And I think just the whole thought of that, and to hope that Niantic can get things running in a smooth manner, because I don't know what that necessarily requires. But if Niantic is able to do that, I do believe that the esports scene can continue to grow. I think other teams will want to continue to getting involved. And I do believe that there are companies, because we've seen it through, like, even King had a tournament recently. It was like an open masters tournament where I don't know who he got involved, but he had gotten some finances involved because companies wanted to sponsor it. And I think that could continue to grow in the right direction because people are starting to bite in, and I think this is just the beginning.
All right. And our final guest that we have joining us, as I said, is JigglyDad, who actually teaches the subject of esports amongst other things, and has plenty of thoughts on the matter. What is your sort of assessment of where we're at as some of these teams start to form? And we saw the news come across this week that Niantic had in fact acquired Havoc, right? That's the name. I think that's the name of the company. That
Mayhem.
Mayhem. Sorry, one of those words that makes it sound like there's death and destruction on the way. But they bought Mayhem, and what do you know about like the entities involved, and how do you feel about just the way this scene is developing compared to sort of your knowledge of esports development in general?
The Mayhem one's an interesting one because Mayhem itself it's a community management company. So how they decide to go about that, so it's a platform to allow communities, to organize, their own little tournaments, their own meetups and things like that. So potentially it could be looking like they may want to use that as their, like their self platform going forward. But it's really tricky as to see whether Pokemon Go will become an esport or not. And at the end of the day, it is up to Niantic and Pokemon Go company whether they want that to go forward or not. And they do fall under the umbrella of Nintendo as well, which notoriously haven't been the most supportive of allowing their games to become into esports. So there's a lot to unpack. Myself personally, as much as I want to see Pokemon Go become an esport, I don't think it's going to become one. There's a few sort of reasons behind that. So there's basically three reasons why I don't think it's going to become one, and like each one can be unpacked quite substantially. But the first reason is like with Pokemon Go, like the ease of access to get into the game. If your game's going to be an esport, it needs to be a game that everyone can easily access, and then easily climb up the ranks, and then have, there's no sort of paywall or excess grinding, above of what, like a rank up type thing. So with Pokemon Go, obviously things like community day moves is going to be a massive issue, not only for new players, but also for players sort of coming back into the game as well. And so that, and also IVs is another thing as well. Not as it's kind of as much, and then also having all the right Pokemon too. So we know sometimes they go in cycles as well, and like you're not always going to have access to those Pokemon. So anybody new or anybody who's only playing the game for for a few months is they're already going to be at a disadvantage. And if Pokemon Go wants to make that ease of access, if Niantic wants to do that, then they're going to have to change quite a lot of the way the game is implemented, and how they can actually make that accessible for everybody to come across and go, right, when I come with this game, we want to build this platform up, we want to make it available for everybody. And so that's always been, that's always been a very difficult thing for games to try and find that right balance, because of course they want to make money, and making money by doing the community days, selling all that kind of stuff, things like that. But you cannot hold an esport behind a paywall. Companies have tried to do it in the past, and it's fallen flat on their faces. So that's kind of my big one. And then of course with the ease of access also becomes the actual gameplay itself. As you guys said before, there's lag issues, there's timing issues, there's desync issues, there's all these kinds of things too. And how even if you were to get people in the same place, that still happens. Is there going to be a way to maybe make it like a LAN style competition where you remove any of that kind of stuff?
Right.
So there's a lot of things that they would need to do back end behind the game itself to bring it up to a scratch. Where it's like, right, we can make this fair across the board, and then it's just comes down to skill.
So when you see the Mayhem acquisition, does that make you think that almost inherently Niantic, Nintendo, Pokemon Company, that they've had some thoughts and conversations about at least being non-hostile to the direction, or do you think that could signal something just completely peripheral, like just a different kind of meta show 6, but still not uber competitive?
Like, I think the acquisition of Mayhem, for me, that signals them more of an approach to try and bolster their community. However, whether that's setting up different communities around the world so they've got more, like, they can get feedback easier, possibly for community meetups, maybe even GBL meetups, things like that too. Like, I think that's more, to me, that's what the Mayhem acquisition feels like. I don't think it feels like it's going to be more of a competitive side of things. I feel it's going to be more of a community social aspect side of things that they'll be looking after.
And are you familiar? I'm certainly not familiar with Mayhem's background. Are there things that you're familiar with, like what they've accomplished in other games in terms of just like what sorts of things they've put into place, or why they would have been an acquisition that was interesting, or is it just?
No, I don't have.
Okay.
I saw them pick up and was like, "Oh, this looks interesting." So I had a quick little looking on them. But
right.
So to me, it's a community management company.
So when you discuss esports as a topic that you're teaching generally, how do you frame the question of what actually constitutes an esport? Like what is it on a definitional level to you? Because to me, that's always the toughest hurdle to get over, is getting people to agree on what an esport is. And I think maybe the reason I have that issue is because I think Pokemon Go falls so far outside what people typically consider esports that you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and so you're not really sure like which edges need to be rounded off to make it fit.
I mean, esports is competitive video games where you have, if you're in a competition, you're playing against somebody else. That's an esport. That's a competitive video game, and Pokemon Go falls right into that. You are battling other people. You are competing. Sylph Arena is definitely like, it's an esport arena. It's not a professional one. It's community driven, but it's still, you're in legit competition. And so, that is what constitutes an esport. It's just like what constitutes a game, what constitutes a sport. It is competition, whether you're playing 1 versus 1 or team versus team. And that's, what we teach. That's even when we work with local esports federations and stuff like that, that's how their definition runs.
And how much of that definition, or just people's expectation, revolves around the money angle? I agree with what you're saying, that by definition anything that is competitive video gaming would fall within esports generally, but usually people get involved in esports on the idea that like there's a something to be gained, whether monetarily, exposure, something. And so the question is, how many games have really gotten to that point? How many games really cross that threshold, and where do we fall?
Well, that's obviously it's the amateur versus professional argument. Is your game an amateur one, or is it a professional one? For Pokemon Go, to be professional, for the money to go in, that's entirely up to Niantic and Pokemon Company. They control the IP, and this is something that we also I do have to be wary of as well when we are organizing our own competitions and stuff like that, because the minute money gets involved, it has to go through the developers. If it doesn't, then sponsors will not get behind you, and if they do, they risk a lot, legality-wise, of whether they can get behind you or not. So that's one of the biggest barriers. So for something to become an esport, is like the developer actually has to sign off on it. If they do not, which is why Sylph runs a very fine line, and it's also why one of the main reasons why you can't actually put money or anything like that on it too, because the minute money gets involved, they have to sign off on it. And if they don't sign off of it, then you're illegally running a competition, and then they can come for you.
So when it comes to Sylph and esports, it really seems like the growth of Pokemon PvP has come through GBL, and it seems like a larger number of people seem to feel like that is going to be the driver behind it being a more lucrative thing, or a bigger deal, if you will. What do you think in terms of changes that Sylph could make in order to make itself more viable as an esports entity, or do you think that ship's already sailed and it's kind of picked a lane that it's an amateur version of something and it can't be altered?
I mean, Sylph is sort of like, I mean, I got so much love for the job, like the job that they've done, the crew at Sylph have done, because they've managed to take something totally community driven, and built it into such a, an enjoyable facet of the game. But they are pretty much like, I can't see them really being able to do much changes to go forward, because anything they do make change go forward, all of a sudden they are gonna be coming into odds with Niantic, and that's whether they can find a way to work with them or not. I don't know. That's a whole lot of, that's kind of stuff that not much of us are going to be privy to. But they're at the point where they can keep going with the way they are, making changes or whatnot to their format. But if they want to really, really grow it, then they would have to get permission from Niantic to really start to bring sponsors in, actually make sort of grow that Sylph point where it can actually be like a premier amateur competition. Like, I don't think they'll ever get to the point where they can actually run it professionally. But I definitely think they, if they could get at least permission from Niantic to be able to televise it, and actually be able to bring it up to a more of a professional amateur level, then I think that would be really cool. But again, it comes back to the developer and what they are willing to give and what they are not willing to give.
So BattleBill, what would you say in terms of, you've had some conversations and obviously a lot of that stuff's going to be private, but what would you say would be your goals or expectations in terms of what would define your participation being a success in the esports realm over, say, the next year or two? If what would you be able to see as development on the scene that would be a signal to you that things were going in a direction that you were happy with?
I think two things specifically would be other teams potentially coming onto the scene. Like, we've already had two, so the continuation of that happening, and then also potential just like matchups between these teams, like types of tournaments that invite those teams along with maybe other people that like to participate, or tournaments hosted around those teams. Just involvement, I guess, in the sense of Sylph, while also incorporating the team aspect of of each of these esport teams that have already entered.
All right. So do you see probably the teams themselves as they form, sort of forming maybe a loose coalition, if you will, or like a league where they kind of work together, set up kind of like old barnstorming baseball teams or something, where they're just like, well, we're the teams, we're going to play each other, we're going to kind of go on a tour and build up a rivalry here, and there's not much organization around it other than that, where it's going to be fairly independent? Or do you think you guys are going to be actively kind of seeking others to try and organize those events and bring you in?
We will try to be seeking others, but if that doesn't end up working, then it would be the first option that you mentioned.
And MJ, I assume you're still with us. As somebody who partakes in, like a highly competitive format like the Specialist Cup was today, and takes it down, when you see it and you think of like the challenges that you like to tackle, and you think of sort of the community element of things, how do the developments that you're seeing either from Niantic in terms of acquisitions, the moveset changes, their development of the game, or just the teams that are forming, like, does that look like something that you want to be a part of, or something that's just kind of a world apart from the kind of stuff that you enjoy?
It does seem like something I want to be a part of, but then it's like like what Blaze said, it comes down to Niantic, and I have no trust in them whatsoever. Like, absolutely no trust. I've seen the Pokemon Company be able to do like at least some variant of an esport with their own VGC national championships and world championships and with Pokken. But if we got to involve Niantic, I like the trust is fractured there with them. I don't trust them at all. And yeah, that's where I'm at on that.
Yeah.
I also think that, I was thinking, just to add to that, I also think that because Niantic does have to answer the Pokemon Company as well. And if you do look at what Pokemon Company has provided over the years when it comes to the competitive scene, obviously the trading card game's huge, and that's been going on for a very long time. When it comes to video games, it's a lot more limited. Like, there was a DS, Pokken has been around a little bit as well. They are looking at moving slowly across the Sword and Shield. And when you are running an esports tournament, and you're looking at the different regions around the world, like there's a lot to go into that. And it feels like Pokemon Company's is like, right, we're going to stick with a trading card game, and want to stick with our DS/Sword of Shield, that side of things. I don't feel like there's going to be much room for anything else. And the one I do expect them to throw their resources into is actually going to be Pokemon Unite. I think as much as we want Go to be the next esport, I think it's going to be Unite. And that's where I reckon they're going to throw their resources in.
Is Unite the MOBA? Is that the...
Yeah, it's the
okay.
MOBA. It's the MOBA.
Okay. And when it comes to sort of the way that the pandemic has played into all of this, we say as we see you sitting outside by a beautiful a seaside that everyone would envy at this point. So what do you feel about the pandemic situation and its impact on the development of esports generally? Would you say that because people can't get together, it proposes a lot of challenges, or would you say that giving people, staying home, something to watch on Twitch and a lot of free time on their hand means that it's going to be more of a boon than a hindrance?
Well, I mean, Twitch has already seen it's like a 200% uptake ever since since the pandemic started. So people have obviously been going, they want to watch sports. The only international tournament to happen this year was the League of Legends, World Finals. And I still have no idea how the hell they managed to do that, but they did manage to get teams from all across the world to fly across into China and to Shanghai and actually compete for over a month. So the pandemic has come up with some interesting challenges because a lot of these sports games, ping is an issue. And so players are, they're no longer able to come and play in person, like in a LAN situation. They've had to play online and play across continents and stuff like that. And a lot of tournaments have still happened with relatively decent results. People have had to go, right, we've got to play off ping, but it has, the pandemic has really helped sort of push things forward and go, right, sporting events can't happen, but we can still do esports. We can still do stuff online. So it has, the pandemic has actually really helped boost the scene and put a lot more eyes towards, video gaming as, a competitive scene. So it's been surprisingly good for it. Obviously the bad part of it is like we can't actually get together, and actually enjoy the community aspect of it, especially, like with self tournaments and stuff like that. So that's been a very, a hard thing to handle for some, but, in the sense it has shown that a lot of the stuff can be done online.
And along those lines, it's been certainly a boon to Twitch, but what would be your feelings on the likelihood that a return to normal, whenever that is, takes a lot of eyes back away from it? Or do you think that that you see this more as a general trend that we're likely to be able to sustain growth on the video game side? Like, when people are able to go outside, are they going to choose to play a video game over, going to take in a baseball or basketball game?
That trend was already happening. The lockdowns only just fast forwarded a couple of years, but that trend had already been increasing already. Like, especially just talking to sporting organisations around New Zealand as well, who some of us actually work with as well. they've seen a major drop in participation, like in the high schools and stuff like that. There's been a huge drop in participation in sports over the last couple of years, anyway. And so we've been helping some others, and like there's different companies working to bring esports into high schools, and that's just seen participation numbers skyrocket again, because that's what kids are doing. They're out there, they want to play video games, they want to play them in a competitive setting, and so they're gravitating towards that instead of, unfortunately, at the cost of traditional sports.
Right. And what would you say in terms of the biggest advantage to, say, the pandemic being over would be? Do you think that the ability to get all the competitors in one place is the most important element of that, or do you think that there's actually a significant component to, like, I know that there have been esports events where people have packed into a stadium to watch it, which still kind of blows my mind, but like, do you think that is going to be, part of things moving forward?
Oh, definitely. Like, I was living in Korea for the last 10 years or so, and I've seen some of those esports tournaments over there. It's insane. You are literally going to a K-pop concert, like watching It was just a whole other level. Probably one of the standout moments is I went to the Apex. So for Overwatch, I went to the Apex Season 2 Grand Finals. 5,000 people stadium, jam-packed, 95% female, by the way. It was just all college girls going along to watch this game, and they knew everything about the game too. Cheering at the right moments. And when the team ran, like, I basically lost my hearing because the screams were that loud. But it was just like going to a pop concert. That's how into it these people are. And even the tournament that I ran in December, so we had another tournament here for local schools that I've been working with. So we had 12 teams from 8 different schools compete. And just, the fact of bringing them all together, having them come together, meet the different players in the schools, play against each other, across the room from each other, that's, it was amazing for them. Like, the experience, they just love it. So that, even though you can do this stuff online, you can't quite, there's just something about that community experience by getting everybody together, and, whether it's like in a hall or a stadium or something like that, and getting people to compete against each other and having that audience and having those people watch them along, there's always going to be that, that side of things that you can't replicate online.
BattleBill, how do you feel about being compared to a member of BTS indirectly?
It's not a bad comparison. Something I look forward to experiencing.
Yeah. So what does it look like to you in terms of pandemic versus no pandemic? Do you actually see that being something in your mind that you would partake in this, going to a big stadium and being part of that? Or are you taking it one step at a time and looking at it now as more of a what's in front of you digital endeavor, and you don't really have to decide one way or the other whether that's part of your lifestyle?
So honestly, that's a great question, just because, like, the whole reason why I started this content creating and have gotten this far is because of the pandemic. Like, I didn't put out a single YouTube video until a month or two into COVID starting. And it's been just a slow process of me starting the YouTube channel. Then after that happening, then I started the Twitch channel. Then I started some other things just to continue to grow from there. So I'm kind of just like sitting back, watching everything develop, taking it baby steps at a time. But I'm definitely open to all potential experiences.
Nice. And what do you think would be the I think at least Mazer Gaming, I think, has even more folks than you guys have so far, right? Like, they've got quite a few people. How do you see this dynamic going in terms of just like flat out team size? Do you think that people are going to try and amass like giant power teams, or do you think that they're going to break down into sort of teams where most of the members take part most of the time, and it's more of a people gel together kind of situation?
So I look at Pokemon Go specifically in two different, how do I break it down? In two different ways, essentially. There's content creating, and then there's like legitimate competing. And considering how small Pokemon Go is right now, most of the content creators do need to be people that are also competing in those types of tournaments. The only exception, I think, is Dunebug at this point, because he also signed with Mazer, and he doesn't put out any type of content, but he's also like proven himself as being one of the best in the world. So I can understand why that's somebody that Mazer would want to sign on to their team from a competitive aspect. But can you say the question one more time? I forgot where I was going with my point.
Wait, now I'm trying to remember my question. Just the sort of how do you see the teams coming together in terms of, do you think that it's going to end up being the case that a few power teams just sort of align and mass up rosters where they can, you know, basically be like Yankees versus Dodgers or Lakers versus Celtics kind of thing? And that's a dated reference from a boomer like me, but
no, but I respect it. But I remember where I was going with my point now. I know I remember you're asking. So basically, where I was trying to get at was, I think they could amass, like, whatever team wants to amass as many creators / competitors as they want, because they can essentially kind of like break it down to subsections. They can add all these like team members that create content, because then they'll get the exposure that they're looking for just from the content side alone, as long as like they're streaming on Twitch or potentially putting out YouTube videos. And then also some of those players could then be brought into a subsection where not only are they creating content, they can also compete too. So I guess that essentially becomes where, like, gets to the point where these teams can add as many people as they want, because they can have certain sections like, all right, you can just create content while repping our name, while these certain players are going to go out there and compete in these tournaments and represent us there.
Yeah, and obviously when we're at this lower number of participants on each team, it's, you know, I guess you don't know what role you'll fall into, but do you see yourself primarily as a content creator, as a battler, or do you think that they're both kind of 50-50?
I see it as 50-50, just because when I was competing in Sylph, I wanted to do that to the best of my ability. Like, there's just competitive fire inside of me. And even from the content creating aspect, like, I will sacrifice my sets sometimes for some spice Pokemon to put out some good content. But at the same time, I make sure to balance it with highly skilled plays to make sure that I can sit on top 500 leaderboards and aim for first page and get to like that top spot on the Pokemon Go leaderboards. So I see myself 50-50.
Yeah. And MJ, as somebody who is looking at this and is not yet on a team, but you really take these kind of competitions seriously, is it the kind of thing where you would be interested in getting involved, finding a team, even if you didn't necessarily see a whole lot of payoff in it in terms of, you know, you're not a content creator, those sort of things, where you're basically just like, I'm in it for the pure competition? Does it appeal to you on that level where you're like, yeah, I want to really kind of find a team before this thing becomes a thing? Or are you gonna kind of let it be, and if it were more mature, you'd really want to get involved?
Oh, that's a tricky question. I wouldn't mind being on a team, like, before everything hops off. Like, I would want to be on a team. I don't know. I never really thought about it like that. Like, I definitely would want to be on the team if it involved like more competitions, just like out of the drive, just to want to be the best and like that competitive fire in me. But yeah, if a team came offering me like, hey, you want to be on our team? Like, yeah, sure, I'll hop on, definitely.
And I know Ethan /Scientist, you always are saying that you really value Pokemon Go as a game. You value the grind. You essentially do the battles for the rewards, even though you do enjoy the battling community, but you don't really see esports as being like something in your future. And I think that you've maybe even said that the only team you want to be on is Team Jiggly, if I were to make one. But where do you really fall when you look at all this stuff? What do you think about just sort of the scene that we're seeing develop, and what does it mean to you?
Well, I think that the team, or the whole scene, could definitely grow if they offered, like, I was just thinking about it while you guys were talking, if the Pokemon Company offered tournaments like they did with the invitational they had with like King and Poke-AK, if they had more of those style of tournaments with actual teams behind them at Pokemon events, then I definitely see like the esports scene growing. That is something that is huge. and it would gain a lot of traction for the game. And the only thing stopping that from happening would probably be the barrier of entry for PvP alone, and also like lag in the game, because we all know how bad that can be at times. And the barrier of entry is rather high for pretty much every league in PvP. So yeah, I think having more of those types of events would be great for the esports scene. Having more teams acquiring players is also great. Rebel and Mazer being the two starting right now, which is awesome. Super pumped for like all that gravity that's happening there. No, I think it's sick.
The gravity. I wasn't ready for that word.
The pull of the esports teams coming in, it's awesome. And I think if we could get like maybe a couple more teams coming in, and then like Niantic taking this game seriously and actually like fixing some of the problems that are going on, then we might actually have like a shot. But yeah, I think honestly, like as a community, we've done almost everything we can to try to launch this as an esport, and now it's like kind of like the ball's in Niantic's court, kind of almost, and we just have to like let them kind of like see how we've developed and determine based on that whether they want to put the time into this community. And I know Blaze brought up Pokemon Unite, and by nature, I feel like MOBAs are much more competitive in nature. That's just the style of game that MOBAs are. Like MOBAs require insane amount of skill and knowledge, game knowledge, but so does Pokemon Go with Pokemon PvP. Like people just think, they have the reputation of PvP as it's just like, you're just tapping your screen. There's not much thinking going on. Like these are the more casual players that just do like raids and stuff. They're thinking, oh, it's just tapping. Like there's not much going on there. But when you actually like dive into it, there's a lot of math and a lot of like real intense like strategy and problem solving that's happening in a PvP battle that you can't necessarily dissect just on the ground level. So I think that it's very much a developing sort of scene, and we could potentially see growth if Niantic wants to take a further step in furthering their game. So I think that it could be very positive if we do see a world one day where lag will no longer be a part of GBL or PvP.
In a world where lag no longer exists.
That would be sick. That would be so sick. And it would be so positive for the game in general, because like every single part of the game is affected by lag. Like it's not just PvP. The raid scene is affected. Sometimes you're not as efficient with catching because of lag. Every single part of the game is affected. It's not just PvP. So if they were able to fix all that, maybe we would actually have a shot at an esports type scene, and it would just be like an esport for a mobile game. So it wouldn't be anything like huge, unless there's like lots of sponsors or whatever. But it wouldn't be anything like League of Legends, but it would be its own little thing, and it would be nice. I think it's awesome. I think it's cool that like we have BattleBill and like Tiny Boy and Country Nerd and Gucci Gang and Speedy, all these people being the first like pioneers and representing that. So I think that's sick. Yeah.
So Alyssa being one of the pioneers in the team tournament creation and running one of the two, what I would consider major team tournaments in Pogo with Battle of the Servers. What do you see when you see these developments in terms of, what thought processes it triggers for you in setting up your next battle of the servers. How many people you're trying to pull in from these teams, or what it means to you generally.
I am what I think is our group's fearless optimist, and I am looking forward to the changes that this might bring to our competitive community. I really like this to be a success. I'm not sure if it will be. I think Niantic needs to get on the ball and really fix their lives right now, because it can't be a competitive thing until the lag issues are fixed. Like, I had a set in GBL I was doing the other day, and I lost 5 games in a row that I would not have lost if it had not been like for ridiculous amounts of lag. Like, I was just sitting there watching myself slowly die, unable to do anything. And I guess I'm a glutton for punishment because I finished the set of 5 anyway. Until issues like that are fixed, I don't see how it can be a true competitive esport. But with Niantic acquiring that gaming platform, I feel like maybe they're starting to take this a little bit more seriously and moving in that direction. So optimistic about that. As far as what that means for Battle of the Servers, I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing, and I'll definitely reach out to these teams or members of the teams and try to put a bug in their ear. At least, a couple people from each of the 2 major teams have competed in bots, not necessarily on those teams that they're now with, but with other teams. So I think that a relationship could be formed there. And I wouldn't doubt that they'd be able to field a team or 2 from Mazer, maybe a team or 2 from any team that starts to form. I know it's just the 2 right now, but I feel like with those 2 popping up, more will probably pop up in the near future. I think it means good things for the growth of our community.
With those teams popping up and sort of the more, I don't know if we call it more serious nature, but kind of the branding of some of these teams as opposed to, arguably R44 was a branded team, but it's kind of hard to call R44 a brand when it's more of just like a community organization that happened to be pushed by a guy we all love. What do you see that meaning to it? Do you see there being any rule changes or having to consider anything? Like, if say they did want to enter multiple teams, would you consider like what they were or weren't allowed to do based on membership on certain teams, or ways that judging would have to be done?
Well, we've always allowed multiple teams. They just had to be named something different, and you could not have any crossover between the 2 teams. So it had to be just separate members on each team. Nobody could compete from 2 different teams. But other than that, there had definitely been communities that submitted more than 1 team. So that's fine. I can't think of any immediate rule changes that I would need to make. It hasn't really occurred to me to flesh anything different out so far. I can't see how any of that would change.
I'm just trying to think of something like, in a lot of Sylph tournaments, certainly the idea is that you have certain secret information, and it's all against the rules to, say, share what your opponent's moveset is with another competitor ahead of time. And if you've got teams where you've got multiple teams known to be aligned in a group, like, it would almost feel like it would be incredibly tempting for team members to kind of wink, share a key bit of information, like, that they're running this spicy move, or they're running this of the 2 50-50 options, which might, really swing some important matches. I'm just wondering whether that is something you feel like you'll need to think about, get on top of, or it's obviously early, but
right.
Those are the
maybe
kind of things.
So from Arkansas specifically, there had always been at least 5 or 6 teams just from this state, and it's not a big state, and Pokemon's not that big of a community, so of course we all know each other. And I can promise that the thought had never crossed my mind to help another team, despite me being friends with any of those people. Like, at the end of the day, I want my team to win, even though I'm friends with them, and a team from ARPVP winning would be really cool. I'd still rather it be my team than theirs. So I'm a good friend, but I'm not that good. As far as like an organized team sharing information, I think that falls under rule number 1 of any tournament ITO, and that's don't be an asshole. So, you know, it's honor system. Just don't be an asshole.
And what do you think about, I think that I know the answer already, that your primary focus is always on kind of the community angle of things, and so you wouldn't want to compromise that. Do you think that it would come to a point where if some people were taking it incredibly seriously and you've got like team A and team B and they're all making stacks of money and every other team in the field is just amateur, do you think that you would ever get to a point where you differentiated between them, or do you think that you would always welcome all comers?
So it kind of reminds me of the Elite Four and when they were battling and they didn't win, and I consider them elite. So I don't see how this would be any different.
Right. And Max, I know that you haven't gotten to chime in. What out of what you have heard so far makes you the most optimistic or pessimistic? I know you lean toward the Pokemon Go has no chance to be an esport lane, and that's fine. But what have you heard today that either, or have you seen this week even, that makes you maybe rethink what you've thought, or are you still thoroughly convinced that this is just never going to happen?
Well, thanks BattleBill for being here. Right, let's go.
Yeah, BattleBill did duck out. He had to take off. Thank you for being here. Sorry.
Shout out to BattleBill. So Pokemon Go will not be an esport. However, if somebody wants to pay me to be part of their esport like membership or whatever, I will gladly change the script. No, but it's similar to what JigglyDad had mentioned, that there's this paywall to start, and people right now are fully invested on the Sylph system, which is a free system because the game already takes up so much of your resources, like Stardust, Community Day boxes, Elite TMs, having to get incense and Stardust and spending and time, because time is essentially your money. So you have to take time off from work, time for family, time for friends, gas money, all these just immense amount of resources for you to build teams. So, you know, a new Pokemon that could come out, for example, day one when Mana Buzz was released, you'd have to get that by grinding like crazy, spending a bunch of money on the rocket stops to get the eggs and then the incubators, so you can get your best chances at getting either a hundo for Ultra League, and then the XL candy on top of that, just candy in general to power one up for Great League, and then doing all the trading, so multi-accounting, and essentially to shortcut and to bypass this paywall or this huge leap of entry to barrier, it would be enabling spoofing, multi-accounting, and all these things that are, you know, taboo or just nonsense in our community that people don't like. Because let's say somebody who came from VGC and is like, let's just say Cybertron, right? If he was like, oh, I want to do Pokemon Go, right? And I want to do PvP. Well, how is he going to do it unless he's had an account for forever, or he essentially buys an account off from somebody? You know, we want to see him play, not, you know, now, or at least in a week or a month, not, you know, a year from now when he's finally level 38 to power things up to level 40 for Great League, you know, and then not do the XL stuff until he does 2 more levels, and there he is at level 50. You know, sponsors aren't going to wait for that. Sponsors are going to wait a year or a month for that. They're going to just be like, I want to see this now. I paid for this investment. I need to see a payoff now. What's my ROI? So it can't be a traditional esport. Now, if Niantic wants to be inventive, the one thing that I say that Niantic doesn't do, that I think is just like will solve most headaches, is that this is a VR game. It's a unique game that has unique bugs with unique problems that use unique problem solving, right? They don't say that. They just say like, oh yeah, we got this, and they clearly don't. It's they're pioneering a new genre of gaming, VR, you know, IRL gaming, or augmented reality, whatever the heck they want to call it. So they don't mention this stuff, and so then we have these expectations that they don't meet, that they either can't meet, or they just can't demonstrate to us. So then you add on top of that, we want to be an esport. Everybody wants to be an esport. It's like, well, maybe they make a brand new subgenre or category of esport, like a VR esport, right? Or a VR sport, whatever the hell they want to brand it, and be like, look, this is a sport that has a high barrier of entry and it has a high payoff or high reward or something like that. And they just like they jump off of that one where it's like, oh, it takes a lot of dedication, and they like brand it off of that, they market off of that instead of saying like anybody can play it. No, not anyone can play it. You know, with the people that are going from CS:GO, you know, there's not a barrier entry to do Valorant. They just go from like, all right, like I'm tired of headshotting and one tapping in CS:GO. I'm gonna go over to say hi. Hi. There you go. I want to go over to Valorant. So they just like go over, learn the different recoils, the different skins, the different strats and the characters, and be like, all right, I can one tapping is still one tapping, right? Yeah, you just hit them on the head and they're dead. Like you just one shot them headshot, you're good. Cool. They just learn the different recoils or the different way that the guns function, and they're good. They're like they're already on their way to becoming an esport legend. And the only thing is like, well, you just have to prove, you have to just grind in your ranking, which should be pretty easy if you're legit. Easy. Which would be similar to like, all right, if you're really good, then in GBL you should be able to hit at least, what's the expert before you go to legend? Yeah, so you should be able to hit expert, no problem. We don't expect to hit legend maybe, because maybe you don't have the resources, but at least hit expert. Oh yeah, for sure. You do it, and then you're, you know, okay, that was your recruitment. But there's none of that. And so to me, it's kind of doomed to fail because people want something for free. We've tried to make it okay, it won't be ranked, but a $5 tournament, and you get to, you know, winner walks away for $1,000. $1,000 is pretty, you know, significant. $1,000 can pay off, you know, somebody's last car payment or tuition, or even some people's rent, you know, especially if there's somebody who is starting out in life and they're like, oh, rent is reasonable, then, you know, $1,000 I can try to help pay off rent. You know, or your plane ticket to go experience a different country or city, you know. So there's nobody was really interested in that. They said, no, I want ranking. Because right now that's the system that everybody cares about. King's not gonna, you know, do my tournament videos if I'm not 7-0ing a ranked tournament. Sylph isn't going to give me a trophy or an invite to a battle tower or whatever if I don't go 7-0 on this tournament, you know, because it's not ranked. You know, they don't care about inviting me to regionals unless I perform well in their circuit. So why on earth would I do these paid ones if I'm just going to get money but no kind of glory or trophy? So until people start going into a different category of tournament systems, it's not going to happen. Maybe with these professional tournaments or professional teams saying like Mazer and Rebel saying like, oh, we can give you a salary, an actual, you know, decent salary to play a game. Maybe people will start going over to a new system. So that could go to like Sylph or Smash.gg or the Niantic system if they make it publicly accessible for somebody to be a TO, which then means that, you know, a TO could be someone proper and not someone that just anyone can be a TO. There's no criterion. So that's also a thing that gives people inconsistency on tournaments. Anyone can be a judge, and no one's consistent on judging. You know, some people are there going like, oh, it's a rematch, and you know, 5 other judges would be like, that's not a rematch. The other 2 judges would be like, oh, I usually just like flip a coin, and then the last judge is kind of like, I don't care, I just did this to shut you guys up. You know, it's just, there's a lot of different people out there that can just perform all these different roles. Right. So you know, hopefully with these major gamings and stuff like that, then there can be a little bit more structure or something to hold everyone accountable for their roles. And I think DJ wants to say something.
Yeah, I was already gonna queue up DJ, but DJ, go with whatever direction you were already gonna go in.
I mean, I'm basically just you know, reinforcing just what he says as well. Like, I think what we really need to think of is, you know, there's only going to be, you know, with Pokemon Company, they're not going to release a whole heap of games as an esport, you know, and realistically, they're not going to be able to because, you know, the resources that are required to make an esport, you know, it's a lot. So they've already got the trading card game. We've already got the DS / Sword and Shield coming up. Unite possibly as well is coming through. So when we think about if we want, what do we want from our esports game? Do we want it to be Pokemon Go? With the way, the battles and everything like they're done, is that do we really think that's going to be the most effective use of, their resources going in to make that like, their top tier esport? Because whatever it's going to be, like, the Pokemon name is, it's a huge name. It's a worldwide brand. So whatever they're going to, however they're going to do it, it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of power, a lot of stuff pumped in behind it. And I just don't think Pokemon Go is the right game for them to throw all in on. I think is, they've already got they've already looked at going into the AR style of things. I think they almost need to go one step further and like actually make it like AR/VR. It's like when we think about competitive Pokemon tournaments, what do we think of? There's the old, obviously the old games which were turn-based, on the on the Game Boys and stuff like that. But most of us grew up, watching Pokemon on TV as well. We're seeing, we're watching, Ash, with his team of 6 going to a stadium and, telling his Pokemon what to do. And, if you were to wanted to see it as an esport, that's kind of what you want to be doing. Is, you want to be able to go into a stadium and go, right, Pikachu, quick attack, dodge that. Charizard, go out there, fly. You want to be able to, tell your Pokemon, things like what to do. And that's kind of, see like that as like the pinnacle of how you'd want to see like a Pokemon battling game. Instead of just like, it does get a bit, tapping all the time. Not that there isn't, any, obviously there is like, lots of stuff going on behind the scenes with like the technicalities and stuff of that. But at the end of the day, you are just, tapping and trying to get things in the right order. And, from a spectator side of things, is that interesting? Could somebody, who's never seen the game before come on and watch it? It's like, okay, they're just tapping and I'm just seeing, just these monsters going at it. Is that something that's really going to be able to sell what's happening, as opposed to, if you are looking at, I'm just spitballing here, but if you were to get somebody to jump into a VR and like actually see their avatar and actually pointing their Pokemon going out and you'll actually see the Pokemon battling each other, already aesthetically, that's going to be a hell of a lot more interesting to watch than just the way that Pokemon Go represents those challenges. And so, that's kind of what I think of when you're looking at what the next, Pokemon esport could be. I just don't think Pokemon Go is going to be enough to carry that forward. And I think, you need to look more towards the future and look towards what technology, what's available in technology in the moment. And then, see them create like a new game and a new way of actually having the game, the Pokemon, battles represented. And Sword and Shield's already one way, but it's still turn-based. And I as much as I do enjoy turn-based, I think that's, it's limited. I do like the free flowing aspect of Pokemon Go, but I think it's under a lot of restrictions the way the game can go. And it's kind of like, it feels like it's a step to something else that could go, that could be visualized as technology goes forward. And I just don't think we're quite there yet. Even though there's a lot of amazing stuff being done in VR spaces, and that could be, the next step forward with sort of like augmented reality and VR as well. But again, I just don't think we're quite there yet. And I think it would be risky for Pokemon Company to throw all in on Pokemon Go, which is why I don't quite think we're going to see that.
If you had to sort of rank the hurdles that Pokemon Go has ahead of it, and I guess I'll just limit the list here. If you were to say, well, it's a fundamentally different game because you have to grind it. It's like a real life game, and there's sort of an ethos that's already built up behind that, and it's kind of bolted on. Like, that's one hurdle. Another hurdle is the presentation layer, and the third hurdle is the fact that it's a mobile game that, as of right now, doesn't have a way to fundamentally control the lag, ping, whatever we want to call it. Which one of those do you think is the biggest hurdle to it getting to the point where it would be taken more seriously, because they all seem pretty daunting to me.
They very much are. Like, I mean, you know, traditional esports, they'll especially the finals, are always held in a LAN setting because you know that eliminates lag, and that's always a big thing as well. You know, to make sure the competition is fair. I'd say that, and also aesthetics as well. Like, aesthetically, the game has to be, you know, marketable. And that's always been a problem with a lot of esports as well. Is like, you know, does the game look good enough that we can market it and make it interesting enough, you know, for for TV, for, you know, consumers, for broadcasting, because that's where most of the money comes from. But yeah, I think definitely like having the game, you know, like the fairness of the game, the marketability, and then what's the third one?
Just the kind of the fact that it's not its own game.
Oh,
It's like, it's the fact
yeah.
that it's kind of just thrown on. Like, you could take this mechanic, and if somebody had access to different Pokemon, it would be one thing, but it's essentially like an afterthought to the main Pokemon Go game itself.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing. Although that's not a huge problem in itself. Like, offshoots of games. I mean, Christ, let's look at what Dota was. You know, it was an offshoot of you know, completely opposite from what the game, and it ended up being massive and spawned League of Legends. Same with Counter-Strike as well. You know, it was an offshoot of Half-Life, and then, you know, just became massive. So I don't think that's a huge issue, but I definitely think like the fairness, you know, keeping the game like, you know, equal across the board. So the lag issue is definitely one of the biggest things, and then of course, yeah, the aesthetic side of thing as well, being able to actually market this game across so that people can see it and understand it. Like, I know, you know, games like Counter-Strike, very easy to watch. Obviously, it runs into its own problems with the whole counter-terrorist and terrorist thing. League of Legends, relatively easy to watch. Hard to understand what's going on. Games like Overwatch, quite difficult to watch because of everything that does go on. So, you know, each game, you know, these are like the top tier esports, and, you know, they've all got their own little, you know, nuances and, you know, things going for them and little problems. And, you know, again, Pokemon Go, is that really going to be something that you're going to get, you know, people who are not associated with Pokemon, or people who are a little bit, you know, kind of know what's going on? Is that the thing that's going to be easily marketable, you know, or is it going to be, you know, something else? Would people rather see, you know, the stadiums that we all sort of watch, you know, on TVs, you know, growing up? You know, I think that's, if we can get something more along that lines, you know, it's going to be a lot more easier to push to a wider audience.
Yeah, Dr. Trotter brings up a good question that's kind of along the lines of what I was thinking, which is, you know, we all think, when we think esports, we think primarily of the bigger ones like you're talking about. We think of your Fortnites, your Counter-Strikes, your things like that. But what would you say are some of, what does the esports landscape kind of look like to you, and where would Pogo fit in as far as like an ecosystem of tier whatever, or size cap, if you will?
Well, like Pogo is already an esport.
Right.
It's just an unranked esport, like tier F. Like another tier is where Rebel kind of has an advantage, and why people, when they were like kind of like crapping on Ink when he first came onto the scene, and then nothing happened because of COVID, and they kind of all crapped on him for a minute. But he's been there at these lower ranked esports teams. Like, was it Gods of Badoom or Guns of Badoom is a mobile game. It's a shooter, so it's very similar to Pogo meets like the Call of Duty mobile, or PUBG mobile. And he ran tournaments in Brazil, and one dude named King Venom, which was like his breakout player, won tournaments. He was pretty good at it. And these are tournaments of like $10,000 or something like that, in front of a literal stadium, like a football stadium, a baseball stadium, a soccer stadium, whatever stadium that you're used to. What's the other one that everyone else, but rugby, like a rugby stadium size worth of people watching this on a big screen, paying to watch to see this. You know, he's been there, he's seen that, and that's kind of where Pogo could go to, where it's like you have a lower you're not a premier S tier esport type of thing like Overwatch possibly, but we have all these different things that can have right now. We are an esport. We have our own tournaments. We had Omega. We had Battle Tower. We had these like what is it called? Remote megas. Multiple times over with tournaments being streamed. We just had one streamed the other day, Atlanta versus LA. So we've always had these things. It's just the community has different expectations across the board, even among its leadership. So because of that inconsistency, and there's no coherent group. There's just kind of like this big mass blob um, of content creators that are kind of like, this is what we're aiming towards, because they do play other games and they do see these other games being this esport. So they're trying to push it over toward that threshold, but I think they're kind of blinded by that ambition, and they don't understand that, like, we have something here, so we'll just kind of stick to this, and we'll just create our own type of, we'll be unique on our own. We don't have to follow everybody else's footsteps. So
I mean, Pokemon itself, like the IP is huge. It's one of the biggest IPs, in the gaming industry across the world. Like everybody knows what Pokemon is. So that people see that and it's like realize it's like, okay, there must be a lot of potential here because the IP is that strong. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, again, Niantic, it falls back on Niantic, it falls back on Pokemon Company whether they want to push it forward or not. We can only push it so far as a community until, as we said before, until we run into those, into those type of walls, and whether we want to see it go. Where I'd rank Pokemon, go, like at the moment, I mean, it's an amateur, it's been run as an amateur tournaments, like for itself and through everything else. So it's, it's not it's definitely not like, the S level, S tier level of like, league and the rest of it. But it's, yeah, I'd say it's like an E and F, FE tier. There is something there though. It's not like there's nothing there at all. There is, something there. Much like how like the Smash Melee community, they're out there doing a lot of stuff as well. There's other little gaming communities like that scattered all around the world that are doing, their own little things as well. But I think this is, Pokemon Go is a little bit bigger than that just because of, it is a mobile game, so it makes it very accessible. For everybody, anybody can go in. It's like, as long as you get a mobile, well, can't use the older mobiles anymore. Thanks very much, Niantic, for that. Rip my iPhone 6. But, as long as you got a mobile phone, you can play it. And mobile gaming is becoming a lot bigger because most people have mobiles that can play any type of game. So it's, it's not that it's, the potential's not there. It's definitely, the scene does a lot better, because the community really gets behind it. But again, at the end of the day, it does come back to, Niantic and Pokemon Company, how far it's going to go. And yeah, rip the Smash Melee community as well after that, that little debacle at the start of the year, end of last year.
All right, sorry, I had to step off just a second for the classic Jiggly meow break. So I don't know if there was a little bit of an interruption there. But what would you say in terms of something that we could look for that would surprise you, but that would at least give you a sign that Niantic was, in fact, taking it seriously? Would it be something like including the Pogo in the Play network, as some people have alluded to? Would any sort of, do you think that they've already had their sort of tryout at the TCG VCG championships, and something like that even recurring is unlikely at this point, or would signal anything? Or do you think even giving that another go wouldn't be a significant development?
I mean, I think because like COVID obviously has put a huge wrench in anything like that, and which is why, we probably wouldn't have seen it this year. It's kind of really hard to tell because, that invitational event, that went really, really well. It was really enjoyable to watch. It showed the potential of it. But again, if, I think the invitational type thing, like I'd like to see that again. But I think that's probably about as far as they'd push it. Whether they just get a couple of their top content creators plus the top 10 from the leaderboards or something like that to come across and battle out. I could see them doing something like that. And if they were to go that route, then possibly we might see something, grow from that, depending on how well that was received, and if they managed to find a way to actually, set up a tournament server, an independent server to actually host the games instead of having, however it works at the moment. So hopefully deal with any lag issues, and that's something that they could implement on their end as well. But yeah, if I didn't see something like that happen, then I think the ship's already sailed. Like I can't see them really making a run for Pogo as an esports, and I think we'd end up seeing the resources going into Unite and Sword and Shield. I think that's where their focus is.
In terms of the esports and where they get their money from, when you see things like the Mexican tournament that had 7-Eleven's name on it, and I think there were multiple tournaments from 7-Eleven, but only one of which I think was streamed. What do those mean in terms of an overall kind of money making scheme? Is there a model where sponsors just kind of attach themselves to something without it being as big as some of these major things, or do you pretty much only attract third tier, fourth tier sponsors to something that's at the size that you think we'd be at?
It was interesting, the 7-Eleven one tournaments as well, because they have been like 7-Eleven I'm just trying to think, they were sponsored stops, and so they were working with Niantic to try and get like I know in Asia they were sponsored stops, and I'm guessing probably in other places too. So since they're already in bed with Niantic, then having them sponsored like mini tournaments or different tournaments, stuff like that, it's not, again, it depends on whatever their contract is and stuff like that with Niantic and how they can run stuff like that. I do know, I remember that recently, like Niantic has allowed like the city community day things. However, though, you could get your city
the
to
city
apply
spotlights,
or
yes,
the city spotlight thing. So I think things like that. Like I think I very much feel that's where their focus is at. I mean, it'd be great if they could get 7-Eleven. It's like, right, or other sponsors like that around the world to come and cool, right? We're going to run this, run this tournament, run this sponsored little tournament. Come down, enter your team, and then go for gold and see who comes out on top. I think with the pickup of Mayhem, I feel that's very much where, if we are going to get tournaments, that's what it's going to be like. I don't think they're going to set up, normal tournament structure would be, you'd have your regions around the world, and they'd have their playoffs, whatever, their qualifying matches and stuff like that. And so that, that requires, a lot of work. But at the same time, it's basically what Self does now anyway. So the format and stuff is there for them to do it, but again, all roads lead back to whether Niantic wants to go that route, or whether they just, keep on going the community route, which is what they've sort of been doing. And I think that's pretty much what they stick back, because, Pokemon Go has been one of the top earning mobile games. Like, it's almost always in the top 10, for the last couple of years. Like recently, especially this year during lockdown, and every time you come around to, like the international, the Go Fest and stuff like that, like their earnings just go through the roof. And so with that much monetary income coming from those community things, why do they even need to bother going the esport route? The esport route is very costly, and the amount of resources required to go into it are huge, and the payoff for it can be, it's a risk, and seeing video games try it and just completely flop, and then developers go under and stuff like that. So I can't see them really risking that, where they've already got something that's working for them going on.
So one of the other huge topics of the week, probably the biggest topic of the week, is the fact that we are on the verge of there being the crazy or significant moveset changes, which are going to disrupt the meta as we know it. And to me, this kind of puts a bow on the topic to some extent, because one of the ideas I've thought would be important to this actually developing as a competitive environment is that you have to whether Niantic is making the game better or not, you at least have to get them to get to a point where they are kind of taking a hands-off approach. And that would include maybe spinning off the PvP angle of the game from the main client, where you would never be in a situation where a major tournament would be announced and then suddenly Niantic says, okay, we're releasing this patch version of the game and it's going to impact the way that the battle system works. And oh, by the way, we're changing movesets a week before this happens as well. And, you know, even the, I mean, to me, it feels like it needs to almost be its own separate entity. Do you think that?
I mean, if you watch, like I was just going to say, like, it's just funny you mentioned that too, because if any of you watch Overwatch League, that whole you know, the meta change can completely change up everything. You know, you can have, you know, I think it was NYXL went from being the top team in the league, almost unbeatable. Meta change, they got shat on. You know, and like any kind of change to the meta will completely, you know, disrupt anything, you know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they would have to, if they were to do that, they would have to create like a patch system, and you know, for that tournament, you'd have to play on patch whatever it is, and you know, and the changes wouldn't, you know, depending on how you know, you don't those changes wouldn't come into effect until the next season or until the next part of it, or however they decide to, you know, come up. Because yeah, as we're about to see, like that, you know, the move change. Although in saying that, they're doing the move change in between the GBL seasons, aren't they?
Yes.
That seems to be the way they're coming up. So, you know, they really seem to have like acknowledged that, because, you know, something like that just, you know, it completely changes everything, and you need time to adapt to it.
Right. So I think do we still have you with us, MJ? I know there's so many people that it's probably been a hot minute since you've had a word in, but if you're still there, what are you feeling about the experience of this moveset change, which is, like I said earlier, probably going to be the biggest one that we've had since PvP was announced?
Well, first off, rest in peace, Ludicolo, because of the moveset changes. Like, that's a Pokemon that's going to get shafted just because of the sins of Azumarill and Stunfisk. But I think, I don't know. I kind of want to wait and see how the meta would shift around all these moveset changes, move changes, because for me, there's moves like Karate Chop that at first, the only reason why nobody was really running Karate Chop in the first place was because of counter.
Right.
Karate Chop is basically a quick attack clone. And if Machoke was any little bit better, we'd all be out here running Machoke instead of Machamp. But because counter's so good, there was no need for us to run some of these moves like Karate Chop. Because Fire Spin was so good, there was no need for us to run Ember. Because Sky Attack was good, there was no need for us to build up to Brave Burst. So I think because some of the Pokemon needed to be checked. I like Azumarill, the energy, the damage to Bubble, I don't think necessarily needed to be messed with. I think more so the energy for Bubble was what was making Azumarill so OP. But then again, it also has the stats. I don't really know how to feel about this particular moveset update, just because it's going to change apparently how some of these Pokemon will play, which Pokemon will get used. I'm personally looking forward to Alolan Ninetales and the Ice Ball, but even then, that was once a Community Day voting thing. So if we get this, then what's the point in us voting for another Community Day move if like 4 of the Pokemon are going to get their own thing?
Right. So I guess the biggest question I would have for somebody like you is, or just, I mean, everybody's kind of got their own perspective, but there is an aspect to which some people invest in a Pokemon and they get really, really upset when that investment is wasted, or they perceive it to be wasted. And so I think that generally people have gotten to the point now where they view certain Pokemon as a safe investment, and other people view like other Pokemon where they're just like, I'm not going to participate in Sylph because I would never use that Pokemon outside of a Sylph context. I would only use it because of this really closed meta. And then all those kind of dynamics, and you've got the best buddying, you've got the level 50 changes, and every step along the way, some people are bothered by the changes that they see in the meta, while other people really look at it as more of a chance to learn the new meta. And like, do you, as a general principle, think that it's better to see the meta get a significant shakeup frequently, or do you think that it's too discouraging given how much work has to go into building the mon?
I think it depends on what the mon is that's getting affected by the shift in meta. Like me personally, I don't think Azumarill, Altari, all the Skytech users, most of the Rock Slide users, I don't think they're going to be hurt as much by this move set change. I think there's Pokemon that can get buffed by it. Like just said, Alola Ninetales, there's some Karate Chop users that probably need this. Sunny Cast Form could probably use the boost in damage to Ember, but I'm on the mindset of everything has to change in order to keep evolving. Like I'll take it to the main series games. When Pokemon first came out, normal types and psychic types were basically unchecked. So then Pokemon introduced the dark and steel types. Now Tauros, which was once a dominant force in competitive Pokemon back in 1998, by the time Gen 2 ended, it was non-existent. And people were still able to adjust and adapt. I think if you have some Pokemon are immune to some moveset changes, no matter what they might be. And it's basically just because of their stats. Like SmackDown would have to get a significant debuff in order for anybody to stop using Bastiodon. Like you saw the increase of Shadow, Machamps, and Galarian Stunfisk, and people still out here running Bastiodon, whether they're using Razor Leafers with it, that's its own thing. But I think with any meta shakeup, the top tier metamons aren't really affected by some of these movesets. Like the last Metacham with Power Punch and Swampert with Hydro Cannon were probably the only two who was like, okay, this might actually change how we use them. And even then, the XL Candy made Metacham basically king of Great League PvP again if these move shakeups happen to have a real big effect on it. And Swampert, he's still here. Whereas I think
we know how you feel about Swampert.
Right. And I mean, it's still kind of like if there's not a concentrated effort to attack certain top meta, S tier meta Pokemon, then it doesn't, the move sets are just basically to make more Pokemon more viable, make you think of different strategies. Now, although I do agree, Razor Leaf kind of needed a nerf. Razor Leaf needed a nerf, and that's probably the only one I could be. I'm with everybody else on like, yeah, I agree. It needed a nerf. Everything else, I'm okay with.
Right.
Like I could probably plan around that, see what happens there. Might do a different Skarmory moveset here now. Might make Flash Cannon more useful.
Yeah. Do you so when you look at these moveset changes, and to me, the move changes this time seem like a fairly clear response to what we had being broken. Do you think of it as being kind of refining it towards a system that we've never really had that was actually kind of cohesive where it gets better and better? Or do you think that it's more like once a meta is solved, they just have to iterate on it and kind of adjust the moves so people have a different problem to solve, and that there's not really particularly an end game or a particular place they're trying to go with this?
I actually think in some cases they're trying to future-proof a mon that hasn't been introduced, because in Pokemon Go, we're only just now entering 6th gen, and we still haven't even gotten a 3rd gen mon in the game. Some 4th gen mons haven't made an appearance. 5th gen hasn't even finished. I think, like, for example, what was one of those moves? Crab Hammer. That's a move that, okay, it may help Kingler. Nobody's going to run Kingler in Great League or Ultra League. It may help Crawdaunt. Crawdaunt's too frail. But Clawitzer, when it finally shows up, that could actually use a little bit of buff from Crab Hammer. And if it gets Bubble, okay, Clawitzer has a high attack. You could probably take away some of that damage. I think in this particular case, it could just be they're trying to future-proof some of these upcoming mons that are coming out, because Gen 6 has some hard-hitting Pokemon, and I'm kind of glad that some of the previous mons from past generations are getting like new updates to their moves. So I don't think it's more of it's a new puzzle. I think they're just trying to game plan for what could be a new meta on the horizon.
Yeah, Ethan, when you look at this, where do you think that the prominent role of legacy moves falls into this particular pile, where we've got Karate Chop and Ember on the legacy list for some of the mons that are going to be prominent? Do you think that is going to be a significant part of how this meta develops, or do you think that we're going to see either those moves unlegacied soon, or people just have enough elite TMs that it's just not a big deal?
I don't think it's a huge deal, because I think people do have a large surplus of elite TMs, and also we don't know numbers yet, so we can't like say anything about how influential these changes are going to be. But honestly, the meta is pretty set the way it is in GPL. Like with Azu, like honestly, the bubble nerf, it's nice. Like we need a bubble nerf, kind of, maybe. I don't even know if we do, because Azu's just such a generalist. I don't see the issue. So, but I feel like it's still going to be a part of the meta because it's a generalist. But you do have like other Pokemon, and their time to shine now. Like, I'm super pumped up to play Shadow Machoke. I've wanted to use it for a long time now, and now that it has that new move, I'm super pumped to play it. So, yeah. I think the meta, though, for the most part, is pretty set in stone, and we're just gonna have to see tomorrow where everything stands. But yeah, I think legacy moves aren't really an issue, because by now we have a whole bunch of elite TMs and stuff. So I think we're pretty good on that front, and it's kind of like the whole thing where they released Shadow Ball Haunter along with like a whole bunch of other legacy move stuff a while back. Like that wasn't really an issue, and so I feel like it really isn't an issue either. And I feel like in a way they're kind of trying to discourage meeting in person for right now. And I feel like that's a good thing because of the pandemic and stuff. So they don't want people to, do trades and stuff because of everything that's going on. That could be why they're pushing these changes, but also it's definitely like a meta shake up too. So there's like probably those are the two motives for this decision, and I think that we could see some interesting play with like Ninetales and Politoed and stuff for like the first few days, and even maybe like Kingler if people are feeling really spicy. But like I think that for the most part we have a pretty set in stone meta, and I don't think it's going to change very much. So it's pretty set the way it is. Like maybe Razor Leafers will be like not as popular because of all these changes, which is awesome. But I don't see the meta going anywhere in terms of the Azu core. I think that Bubble is not like Bubble being nerfed is, I don't know. Okay, it's fine, but like it's just gonna make the matchup take longer, in my opinion. So yeah, that's all. We don't know numbers, so.
Right. Now I don't know. I'm guessing that Alyssa might be fairly similar to me in this, and that I typically am fairly quick to spend my dust, but I am actually to the point now where I know this is not an impressive total for almost anyone else, but I'm almost up to 1.5 million that I'm sitting on, and mostly it's because of the uncertainty of where we sit right now, and we're all waiting for the details. Have you been saving up resources, holding off on building anything new because of the impending move change, or just even the fact that we knew it was coming before they told us when?
No, not really. I am in a really good place with dust right now. I have like, not trying to flex on you.
No, go
but
for it.
I have like, I think like 2.5 million right now, which is more than I have had since Boulder Cup. So I feel pretty good about it, but I'm hesitant to dump a whole ton into anything quite yet. So I'm not necessarily waiting for anything. As far as the moveset changes go, I'm kind of excited to see Sky Attack take a little bit of a hit. I've been seeing more Skarmory than I'd like to see in GBL the past couple days now that I'm actually playing again. And I wouldn't mind Skarmory being humbled a little bit because it's giving me an issue right now. As far as the other movesets, there's not really much to say because, like Ethan said, we don't really have numbers yet. So it's educated guesses at this point. But for anyone who is sleeping on Crawdaunt, I say to you that I am offended, and I have used Crawdaunt before. I drafted it once in Arkansas PvP draft, and it was so much fun, and no one knew what to do with it. So that was exciting, and I like anything that has a dark move or a ghost move. So, and he's so cute. It's like a little crawfish kind of thing, and that's my jam. So I will run him, and I am super excited to crab hammer people.
Yeah,
if you didn't run Crawdaunt in Twilight Cup way back when, you missed out on a good life.
I might have. I'll have to go back and look because that used to be one of my favorites.
Yeah,
I must be the only one who had a bad experience with Crawdaunt. I tried it in Sinister and woof. Yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, I feel like when you look at the movesets that they changed, it feels like there were some pretty clear targets. And on the beneficiary side, it feels like if we don't focus on what MJ pointed out with regard to the future proofing, which well could have been their thought process, but it really feels like Crawdaunt has to be the mon that they were focusing on, because as we've alluded to, I can't really see where Kingler works its way into the meta with all the water types that are already so powerful and so available. And so with those two being the only ones that actually can use it now, it feels like there's got to be some intention behind it. And to me, it kind of reminds me of the Weather Ball edition and the way they buffed Abomasnow. And so I'm wondering, do you think that there is any sort of clear winner that you can predict out of just what they've shown us so far without knowing the numbers? Do you think that there are obvious mons that it really barely matters what these numbers are? They're clearly going to become part of the new meta as we know it, Max?
What?
Oh.
I was talking to you saying chat. I thought you were talking to MJ.
Well, I'm talking to everybody, but I was just trying to spread things around, and I thought you would have some thoughts that, like, if you just look at the list of the changes that they're making without being able to attach the numbers to them yet, you can sometimes read the intent. Like, it seemed pretty obvious that they were going to make Abomasnow meta with the meta moveset changes they gave it. And that certainly did pan out. So what do you think is kind of an obvious result of this? And are you memeing with Crawdaunt, or do you feel like I do that they clearly seem to want to put Crawdaunt on the map in some capacity, whatever that is?
I've been a try hard lately for to see how far I can go in this this season, because it's an extended season. Although I did use my maxed out level 40 Azu in Open Ultra this same season, so take that with a grain of salt. But I mean, like, the thing is with some of these Pokemon, it's more than just move sets. It's so like the biggest thing, just the golden rule of Pokemon Go PvP is have fun, right? That's supposed to be the number one goal always, hands down. If you like using memes like me, then like, and that's what, you know, what sparks joy in your life, right? If that's what sparks joy in your life, then that's what you go for. And anyone who hates on you, you know, you tell them to go fuck off. There's, you know, you want to use meta, and meta brings you joy because it, you know, it's a consistent quality, and it does what it, you know, it's a meta for a reason, and it gives you the best numbers, and you like winning, you know, then okay, you know, then that's what you do. That sparks joy. Then you don't, you know, hate on people like, oh well, you only use meta and you're not creative. It's just like, no, I know how to, you know, play by the numbers, and I like using the stuff that's good, and that's what I do. So, you know, that's the number one rule. The number two rule is knowing your typings. And I think Cronut is one of those things that has a good typing, because Dark is a pretty good typing. Water is a pretty good typing. Put together, they're, you know, they're good. So how do you kind of knock something down that has those two good typings? Well, you give them really unevenly distributed stats. You don't make it a balanced mon. You either make it very tanky that has absolutely no attack, so it can't really punish a team, but it kind of can give you some kind of switch advantage or whatever, or you give it an absolute insane attack stat, and you know, it dies to a poison sting, right? And that's kind of where Sharpedo and Crawdaunt are. They can, you know, tear through a team. I think I almost beat a Azu with a slight energy advantage with a Crawdaunt, just because the waterfalls just tore through it, along with Bubble Beaming it and then Crab Hammering it, both, you know, getting all the debuffs. It was like, wow, like, you know, it's a Dark versus a Fairy, and the Dark is winning. Like, that's pretty cool. So Crawdaunt, it can be useful if you make it work with team building and stuff like that, and some sort of strat to go into there. So it's fun, you know. So any Pokemon that has some sort of playability, you know, wherever it lies on the spice spectrum, and GBLs, if you can make it work, then that's all that, and you having fun with it, that's all that really matters. And that's where I've kind of been with a lot of my memes. I do like Gliscor because it's an awkward mon. Same thing with I'm trying to think of another one. Like Galvantula is kind of awkward because it's a electric and bug, and you know, you wouldn't really see those pairings go together, or the paradox pairings. So something like a fire water type that we'll be getting soon. Something like an electric water type like Lantern. You know, those two typings don't really have any kind of, or they're non-interactions, or they're super effective against each other, like Ludicolo type of things. Like the grass type is super effective against the water, so those two pairings matched up give it a really unique kind of feeling. You know, with all those things going on, these debuffs, if they are significant debuffs, just means that some of those Pokemon will shine a little bit more, hopefully. But it just, like, I think the bubble one is kind of a mistake. I honestly think the bubble debuff, no matter how small or big, is kind of a mistake, because there's so many random water types, and even like a Prinplup, right? If they debuff, yeah, now it's going to be Metaclaw, and they're not buffing Metaclaw.
I mean, you have Mantine too. Like you have all these generalists that have Bubble Beam. I just don't understand. Or not Bubble Beam, Bubble.
Yeah, Bubble. But Matt, I don't like Mantine. Mantine can suck an egg.
But generalist, like,
I mean, but it does have wing attack that
it does, but
be the next best move, maybe. I don't know. And like, it getting Bullet Seed with the Bullet Seed buff was interesting, but weird.
what I think is what I think Niantic wanted to do with Azu, what they didn't realize what they wanted to do was maybe like reduce or maybe it's hard because like you have such a generalist Pokemon, and how do you get rid of that generalist Pokemon or like nerf it without affecting an entire meta? Like
you mean a general nerf?
I just like you just avoid. I think you just avoided it at all costs. I think they should have avoided it because then you have a whole bunch of other generalists that are affected by it, and that's just not good for like because you think about things that like I really wanted Blastoise to get Bubble. Bubble and Blastoise would be sick. And now like since Bubble's nerfed, well, okay, I guess we're not having Bubble Blastoise, or maybe they will do it and it'll just be less damage and I won't want to play it because it's not as cool anymore. But
one Pokemon that's new that just kind of it got neutered before it even saw the light of day is Ninjask. Because Ninjask runs Bubble, right? Or not Ninja, sorry.
Greninja?
Greninja, yeah. The other Ninja. It's like now Feint Attack and Bubble, right? Those are the two moves. So if Bubble gets nerfed, then what the hell does Greninja do? And it's supposed to be the star like fan favorite because of Ash Greninja. So now it's going to be what Night Slash, Aerial Ace, Hydro Pump, which is going to be replaced by Hydro Cannon. Same thing with Service going to be replaced by Hydro Cannon. So a starter that has a really cool form that everyone loves, like Lucario, like Charizard, like I don't know why, but some people really like Pikachu. Like all these Pokemon that are just like star favorites are just gonna get completely just hosed and just like running something that you like is gonna be bad for your health. It's like that sucks,
Actually, I kind of have a counterpoint to that. I think with Greninja, with some of these Pokemon, their stats will make up for less, like for the debuff and attack power for the move. Like Greninja has a high enough attack to where even if Bubble got you still have it learning Night Slash, and all of a sudden it can become a Charm clone, or like Razor Leaf on most of Razor Leaf is not named Bayleaf. They're still hitting pretty hard.
I don't know. It looks like it's kind of frail. Like it doesn't have a high defense or stamina. So it's kind of one of those things where I feel like for it to be a thing, but we won't know until people see the difference. Like I think Yusei has a Greninja that he's been using, so he has like an idea. And then when the nerf happens, he'll be like, "Oh yeah, this is not really a change," which will probably go more to your point, MJ, or it'll be like, "Nah, they neutered this thing. It's just you can't even really use it. Maybe Hydro Cannon will save it, which we'll see." But I feel like there's just so many other things that they kind of nerf, and it all comes down to level 50 screwed it all up.
Yes,
for me, because like Azu, your IVs now kind of matter more than before. Before it was like typing, because you could be like, oh, well, I have a rank 1 Azu. What does a rank 1 Azu do against the Shadow Victory Bell of any stat distribution? Like absolutely nothing, So what good is having a rank 1 Azu? Now with like a level 50 rank 1 Azu that with the bubble debuff, you're kind of like, well, now I can kind of get to another Ice Beam or something or whatever. Like the matches play out a little bit differently. But then especially with like a Razor Leaf debuff, like there was a little bit more play with a couple of things, but now it's just kind of it's all wacky. So we'll see what happens.
What do you think we're actually going to see in terms of numbers on Razor Leaf? I would say that's the one that probably is I don't know if I'd say easiest to project, but probably the one where you could come up with a number and say, it's got to be at least this, or if it's not at least this, it's not going to make a big difference, or it'll make a big difference. What's the kind of target number you think where it's going to make an enormous difference regardless of anything else going on in the meta?
I honestly think it wouldn't matter for most of them.
because they have
Like-
such a high attack stat. If
Right.
you go back to that. So I think it's actually really funny, this conversation, because I'm gonna say they're probably gonna nerf it by 1 damage. And it's not gonna matter at all. So yeah. We're not gonna we don't
Yikes.
know yet, but I'm gonna call it right now and say that they're gonna nerf it by 1 damage.
Well, Chaz did a stream where he was looking at the numbers and doing like the comparisons of
Right.
what could we do it if we compared like Sky Attack has this attack, energy, DPE, and all this stuff. Like these are the stats. What would be amongst all the other moves if they were to try to make it into a clone, like debuff it to a clone? What would that be? And so they were looking at all this stuff. Or he was looking at all this stuff, and he has his ideas and his hypotheses, and he was like, and he has this unique formula of if you take the damage plus energy, so like what Razor Leaf is 5 damage per turn or whatever, and then it gets like 3 energy or something like that, and he's like, that's 8, total. That's an 8, and then if you go to any other move where you take damage plus energy, what do those kind of average out at? 6 is kind of the magic number for most of the move sets. So if it does 3 damage, it's probably going to do 3 energy. 1 damage is going to be 5 energy, like lock on, et cetera, et cetera. And we consider lock on to be a very good energy move. So if you look at all those different things, Razor Leaf is above and beyond at like 7.5 or 8 because it does so much damage and it gains enough energy that it's above the mark. So they'd have to knock it down. So if Razor Leaf is Lordly saying 5.5, so he's like, it's probably going to go down to 5. And it's still going to be insane. It's still going to be like a 7, which is one whole, average above the rest. Charm doesn't even make it up there. If you take Charm's energy plus damage output, like it's below this Razor Leaf sum total. So if you look at it, they're probably going to knock it down by 0.5, which doesn't make sense, but Niantic isn't always one to make sense. Like they did a partnering and a sponsorship with Gucci, and then people went to the shops, and then it was like everyone gets it. It's like, then why the Gucci must be absolutely furious. Like, wait, we paid for you to just give it to everybody? Then why? What this deal was like a terrible deal. So, but we can talk about that in a minute. But so Niantic doing a Nianticism. It's probably going to nerf it down to maybe like a Charm clone, which is still going to hurt like a son of a bitch, but it's going to hurt less. It's going to be one of those things where it's going to be a good hurt, maybe. I don't know. Like Grassel is still going to be around. Altair is still going to be around. Azu is still going to be around. A lot of these staples are still going to be around. It's just a matter of they won't be lords of the meta. Instead of them being S tier, they're still going to be A tier. So and for some people that won't be enough, and for some people that's going to be too much. So no one's going to be happy with this debuff. People are more happy about the new moves and or the shakeup, right? So they like things like which was funny because if you what Pokemon did we vote to get for Community Day that was up against the Ninetales? Was it Rhyhorn?
I think it was Rhyhorn.
Yeah, it was Rhyhorn.
All right, like Rock Wrecker is a pretty good move for nothing, right? So imagine if we had Legacy locked away Ninetales, and then it was like Rhyhorn gets Rock Wrecker. Everybody like, that's cool, but that's kind of useless. Why didn't they make Ninetales easier to, more accessible? You just have to TM to it. You don't have to use an elite TM, or you didn't have to do the special event or hope that somebody trades it to you. So imagine a world where we asked Ninetales to be legacy locked and Rhyhorn to just get Rock Wrecker, or Rhyperior to get Rock Wrecker at all times. So it's funny how they did that to us and we didn't get burned on that deal, but it could have easily gone the other way with some of these things where it's like, vote for your C-Day, and people were like, oh man, do you remember the Charmander crisis where it was like, why are you voting for Charmander again? You guys are idiots. And there were all those people just being complete. I know Jalapeno is gonna love this, but the toxicity during Charmander Community Day, and then now it's like all those other things that didn't get voted into are gonna be more accessible. So like it's kind of ironic that people would get upset about that, and then now you can easily, more than likely, you could probably get those other Pokemon that will probably be shiny released, and you'll get the moves a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they do that, where they introduce more moves to the pool. I think that's a better thing to do. And then from there, adjust the meta, because now you could have accidentally made Charm Alolan Ninetales with Weather Ball, Ice Ball, like completely overpowering, because it just can farm down something, and now it can easily get to two Weather Balls, and then now they have to respect it, because that's a completely different coverage. Like it's going to be interesting to see if they accidentally said, "Oops, we may have made Alola Ninetales absolutely disgusting," because they didn't, they didn't balance it out right after releasing a new moveset. So
DJBlaze, I know that, my only real way to relate this to anything that I know is an esport is that I know in the past when I was unfortunate enough to partake in Fortnite and my son enjoyed it far more than I did, that there would occasionally be times where you can argue whether it was deliberate or not, they made changes to the quote meta. I mean, it's a very, very different meaning, but the meta of the way the game played by making a certain weapon too overpowered, and then they would recognize that and they would back off of it. How much do you think that the fact that we have this potential voting mechanism that's been injected a couple times, and just the community day angle in general, how much do you think that is detrimental to the process of actually coming up with a well thought out meta and like the way the game is supposed to play for a company if they were to try and be a competitive, a truly, serious esport?
I mean, the voting one is an interesting one too, because it feels like, they've already got their Pokemon in mind. Like we kind of saw that with the Charmander one anyway. Like that wasn't the one that was actually voted through, but they decided to give it a community day anyway. So it sort of feels like, that they're trying to do this as like, oh, we're going to give the community some input, but we're not actually. It kind of feels like it's like, oh, we're gonna make it like we're gonna put it out there as a, we'll let people think that they've got the input here, but in reality, we've already got our how we sort of see things going forward anyway. And it does, the community doesn't always know best. That's one of the sort of things you need to, when it comes to esports and stuff like that. It is always going to be the very vocal ones. It's like, oh, we want this, we want this, we want this. But a lot of times it's like you might want it, but it's not actually a good idea. So you do need to be careful when you do, you're giving the community some power to, just kind of drive things forward. It's not always a bad thing, but at the same time, it's not always a good thing either. It's, there's a fine line there. And the community day thing, it's very much, they're kind of like in the hospital. I think it's a money making scheme on their behalf. It's not like it's there for to try and it's not trying to like not quite better the game, but it's it's very much a way for them to to increase their revenue. And as far as the PvP side of things go, you're giving monsters community day moves, which will then further be locked behind a paywall again. That comes into the money side of things, and then you're having like these special voting systems as well. And again, it's these are things that are very much designed to to make money, to get people like involved. And when you've got that kind of thing, and then trying to bring that back to an esport, you run into all kinds of problems because as we said before, things do get locked behind paywalls, and it makes some monsters very unattainable. And and then you see like the way they've done this this upcoming meta balance as well. It's a very targeted balance. Obviously those top, that's going to supposedly affect the the top meta mons, but whether they've gone about doing it the right way or not, like again, it's hard to tell. But balancing a game has always been tricky. It's something that developers have struggled with, since competitive gaming came out, and it's always been a very give and take type of thing, and you're never always it's very difficult to get it right, and you end up taking a move away from something and then inadvertently make something else a lot stronger, and it's always kind of the way. So yeah, it's tricky. It's a very tricky balance, and I do very much feel for game devs, when they're trying to balance things out, they're trying to balance out competitive games, especially something like Pokemon. I mean, we do have to remember there's what are we up to now? 500 Pokemon or something within the game?
I don't know the exact number, but yeah, something in there.
We're not dealing with like Counter-Strike and things like that, which are just it's just down to the weapons. League of Legends is only up to 140 characters. That's at the extreme end. So we're dealing with over 500 different Pokemon. Trying to balance that must be a goddamn nightmare.
Right. And so the things that they have done so far in terms of, you've got the separate section where you swipe over and they're clearly treating the PvE versus PvP moves as slightly different entities, and they are selectively introducing some moves but not all of those community day moves. Like, do you see it as more of them trending toward having a more thought out process, or do you think that we'll be right back to voting on things as soon as maybe summer's around, or maybe when they feel like they need to just get a little bit of spark of involvement from the community?
Yeah, I very much feel that's the way that kind of whole thing goes. I mean, yeah, like the December one just being, they only unlocked half the community moves. So that was a bit of a wait. What? Why are you only doing this? Oh, okay, it must mean that you want to try and make us vote, or, something along the lines. I mean, we do have to remember that, like, this is, Niantic's goal is to make money. At the end of the day, they are a company that's running a game like this, and that's going to be their goal. And we see this time and time again with other kind of mobile games as well that act like this as well. Though there's always little ways of trying to weave in there. It's like, right, how can we get how can we sort of push this in, push these kind of community things in to make it feel like people are involved, but at the end of the day, it's like, right, we're going to push this in, so then we get this move out, and then for people to want that move that missed out of it, they're going to have to use their elite TMs, and of course, elite TMs cost money. And on that day, it's like, right, we're going to, here's our special box for that day. Again, more money's got to go into pushing that too. So, it's very indicative of how mobile games tend to sort of, progress and, towards their life. It's like, right, how can we make, how can we keep the revenue streams up, and how can we keep the community happy and feel like they're involved while we're still trying to take their money?
Yeah, I definitely think that one of the biggest trends that we've seen in Pogo over the pandemic has been the trend toward it being even more like other mobile games. But I guess by extension, the question that I would ask is, what distinction is there really at this point between mobile games and console games? And I even would draw some parallels to the TCG, because all those are money-making endeavors. You've got things like on the EA Sports side, you've got the Ultimate Team stuff, which is their big money maker. You've got stuff on Fortnite where they're obviously out to make money, and they're just selling you skins and cosmetics, but it doesn't prevent it from becoming an esport. The TCG, it's entirely essentially we're trying to make a game that's good enough to and collectible enough that we can sell product. Like, it's inherently driven by money. So what things do you see that are so different on the Pogo side that it creates a tension that's more difficult to unwind?
I mean, as you said, like, there's all these other games as well. Like, ever since the free to game play model came about, it's saw a fundamental shift in the way video games are not only design but also the way they are marketed as well. You know, they are marketed as a free-to-play game, and then microtransactions and loot boxes and all the rest of those annoying, lovely things, have come into place. And games have still managed to make themselves into esports, regardless of these things. And the way they manage to do it is to try and sort of focus these things mostly cosmetically, and make the game still free to play. And whatever you do in the game, that's going to be fine. The money side of things will be affecting usually the cosmetic side of the game, or usually different things like that. So it doesn't actually affect gameplay. Whereas Pokemon Go and even some other mobile games to a degree as well, their money transaction scheme does affect the gameplay. And when you, as I said before, when you do have the gameplay that is, even though if it's only slightly affected, it's still affected. If you have that affecting gameplay, then all of a sudden that creates a semi-pay-to-win model, and that's never going to go down well in any kind of community and in any kind of esport.
Right. All right. So I'm going to circle back to Alyssa. How much dust do you foresee spending in the first week of this moveset change just to try things out? And or how many mons do you think you're going to make to just have fun, get ahead of the meta, whatever your reasoning is?
None.
You're just going to hold out and wait?
I already have a Crawdaunt, and that's the only one I'm super anxious about. But no, I prefer to hang on to my resources and kind of watch other people dump all of their stuff into it. And if I like the way it looks when other people are playing it, then I'll go ahead and invest my own. But I am too cheap to go ahead and dump all of mine for something I'm not sure I'm going to want.
All right. I want to go around the horn. MJ, what about you? How are you going to jump right in, or are you going to keep your powder dry?
Oh, see, I have a rank 12 Great League Excadrill waiting to be used, and also a rank 7 Excadrill for Ultra League. So I may dump resources for that. Other than that one, I'll just TM over Powder Snow to Milo and Ninetales and change Ice Beam to Weather Ball and call it a day.
All right. What about you, Ethan? Is Ethan still here?
Sorry, I'm here. I'm here.
I think doing his GBL sets.
I'm doing my GBL. So, I think that I'm gonna probably wait too, because I like watching other people spend their dust. I think that's like a favorite pastime of mine. So I'm gonna probably lurk in a lot of streams and see if Crawdaunt actually lives up to the hype. I know that it's super hype. I know it's movesets. I know a lot about it. I've just been hesitant to power one up myself. So if it actually does live up, then I will definitely invest, and I will use it in Open Great League. But yeah, I think for right now, I'm just going to chill. I'm just going to wait.
All right. And Max, I know you tend to be wise with the dust, but also fast with the memes. So what about you? Are you going to manage to hold off, or are you going to do things just for fun?
I have no dust because I spent it all because Yusei. We can just blame Yusei. No, I was using different mons, and I was building up different stuff for Great League because that's my go-to league. It's definitely easier to spice it up in Great League, so I just end up doing all of that stuff. Like I will probably build some of the staples with just the bad IV ones that I have instead of building up the better IV ones, because then I'll have like 8 Alola Ninetales. The one that was traded to me, lucky, evolve it, and it's done at like a 93%, like 15 attack, 10 or whatever. Just kind of like I'll just use that one for now. And then whenever I get like a Dust Mama or Dust Daddy or a Dust Guardian, I guess you can call them, to just spend all the dust on or for me, or just send me all of the Poke coins so that way I can buy all the star pieces. then sure, I'll build the good stuff. But until then, I'll probably just use a lot of the existing stuff, mess around with different mons in Great League, and just not really do anything too significant than I already do. Already has a god tier, a Alolan Dugtrio, so what else would he need? Well, I mean, like, it's, if they nerf Rock Slide, so a lot of my memes kind of took a hit too. Like my Combuskin took a hit. My maxed out Drobur is gonna take a hit. My Sandshrew is gonna take a hit. So it's a bad time to meme. It's a really
it's a bad time to meme.
And then like some of my memes actually get kind of pushed forward a little bit. So then people are like, "Hey, this Pokemon's good." Like, you don't appreciate this Pokemon. You didn't appreciate it back then when it had glasses, and now when it took off the glasses, it got the whole beauty makeover like you saw in the 90s. like what was it? What was that movie with Freddie? Yeah, Freddie Prinze Jr. movie, where it's kind of like, oh, I'm gonna go out with like this ugly nerdy girl, and she's hot with glasses. Like she takes off the
Are you
glasses.
talking about not another teen movie?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, like that, but like based off of the original. Like all these Pokemon that people are like, oh, this Pokemon's ugly, and then it's like, oh yeah, she's all that. There you go, she's all that. Like now they're gonna be pretty, and all these meta heads are gonna be like, oh, come here, but I'm like, no, like all of the memes are gonna leave me for all of these, good battlers. I'm just gonna be here just all by myself. So yeah, but my guess is basically gone. I got up to like 500,000 spent, and then got up to 500,000 again, spent it all yesterday. So
there's no questioning that both you and Jiggly are the meta hipsters, if you will, with Pokemon.
All right, judge me as I spend all my dust tomorrow. Fine, I see how it is. How about same thing?
Yeah, right. What a respect on it.
They did.
I was talking about mons that are clearly targeted, and the chat brought up one that I should have brought up that seems pretty obvious, because Claydol got both Ice Beam and Shadow Ball. It's already got kind of a wide array of moves. Does anyone see Claydol being a player in open meta or in significant metas, or do you think, I mean, it feels to me like it's going to become more like an alternative Hypno, where you can take it in draft style tournaments and kind of let the move set dictate or be based on your team composition, as opposed to feeling boxed in if you can manage to get yourself Claydol on your team. But does anybody think Claydol is going to skyrocket up in overall usage and utility?
I think in like self or restricted formats, Claydol will rise up. I don't really see it doing much in open, just because of how slow its fast moves are, and B, like, doesn't really have that much of an attack.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a restricted format pick for sure. So. And
what does anyone, I mean, I look at Politoed and I get excited because Weather Ball is just slightly.
It already has Surf.
Right, it already has Surf, though. That's the biggest problem, is you look at it and it's really not that big of a difference. So do you think that that's going to be essentially an excuse for some people to make Politoed that didn't before throw Earthquake on it with an Elite TM, and it's not going to be that different, but it might be more common? Or do you think
I guess that will make somebody want to do that?
I mean, I'm just saying it's going to bring kind of a spotlight. It's going to say Politoed's got something new, so people are going to be like, okay, let's try this, but then they're going to realize that they need Earthquake, and so you're just going to see some Politoed for a while. That's kind of where I feel like it's going to land.
Well, some people are having a hard time figuring out, is the right move Earthquake, which is expensive because of the Elite TM, or do you go Blizzard, which then makes it a different and in some ways superior Whiscash, because it doesn't have the double weakness to Razor Leaf, right? Like you can get off a couple Weather Balls to chip away, or you could build up to a Blizzard, and it's got the same amount of tankiness, but again, like you lose that super vulnerability to Grass, but you gain or you lose out on some of the resistances because it's a water water ground type Pokemon that has one of those like unique typings. So it's hard for people to pick which is the finisher move. Or although you could be somebody that just kind of like, this is going to be my finisher in general, so it's going to have both Earthquake and Blizzard, and just completely completely ignore the update. You know, there are some psychos out there. So
absolute psychos. I guess I'm still excited to see if Porygon 2 can find itself a place with Tri-Attack. I feel like at least Porygon 2 stands a chance as opposed to Porygon Z, which has been a real rough go trying to do a whole lot with that in most situations.
I noticed that was on there and I had to take a double take because I was like, they did that? Oh my gosh, that's awesome. So I actually might, now that I saw that on there, I might actually power up a Porygon 2 just because I know that Porygon 2, I'm gonna make the meta. You know what? I'm gonna put Porygon 2 out there. It's gonna be out there. You guys better watch out.
All right, while we're on the topic, I want to make sure everybody knows that now that Ethan is legendary, he got his end pose that he wanted so much. Like, he and I are moving in kind of opposite directions. He's promised me that he's going to care less about GBL because he only cared about the pose, and he's going to try and do his own thing. And I told him I was going to go into tryhard mode once the moveset dropped and actually try and do my own work, practicing and getting proficient at the meta like I once long time ago was. And so you can hold him to the fire and hold me to the fire, but it's got to go both ways, Ethan. You got to be less.
I'm doing it for Vert right now. I'm doing it.
You got to be less of a hamster. Your mood cannot be driven by GBL, and I have to try harder to actually be competitive and perform to my ability. So you heard it here. If he doesn't live up to my end, I don't have to live up to my end. But starting tomorrow, I'm going to actually be putting in the effort to practice, and people can rib Jiggly. They can give me crap, and it might actually hurt because I'll be trying. Unlike usual. But yeah. Anybody got anything else they want to throw in on the moveset changes before we know the numbers? Obviously, we will see how this all develops over the course of the week. I guess the other obvious beneficiary is Primeape, which also got both Ice Punch and a buff to Karate Chop. I feel like that's going to be, I mean, Primeape was already a pretty darn meta mon. I feel like it's just going to add to its power, honestly.
Yeah, Primeape's interesting.
I think Primeape will be. No, you can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that there's no better way for JigglyDad to go try hard other than with try attack.
That's right.
Yeah, like those kind of just go hand in hand. You got to try hard with try attack, and if you can't, then go back to just running Wigglytuff.
I don't think I was ever a big Wigglytuff runner. I think I get told to run Wigglytuff because it's iconic for Jiggly, but I don't think I'm a big Wigglytuff fan. Don't.
Hey, listen, I get told to run Marowak, but because of my Cubone, but I don't always run Marowak, and I'm getting crap for it. If I got to start running Marowak, then you got to start running Wigglytuff. It's our burdens to bear. It's our crosses to bear.
Oh, jeez. All right.
So you need to run Triple Charm, Jiggly. It's okay. I have some contacts for you.
Debbie Pepper.
All right, we are wrapping up the event for what is the frickin' of the Unova event, right? Mm-hmm. That was what we're just coming out of. And what was everybody's takeaway in terms of the event? I think that most of what I saw was a lot of people saying that it wasn't a fantastic event. You certainly could at least have a shot at getting some wild Scraggy, some wild Pharaoh Seed and the like, but for the most part, I don't think people were super amped about the spawns, and there was probably a little fall off in play. How did everybody treat it? Anybody amped
I
about this
appreciate
event?
the extra trubbish.
Extra trubbish for sure. The
Mhm.
dust. I enjoyed the tasks. The tasks with the 3 golden rares for dust, the used berries for dust, and the pharaoh seed for hatch 2 eggs. I enjoyed all of those tasks, whereas I think the previous event had some pretty awful tasks that I didn't really want to complete any of them. So I hope that we see more tasks like that are actually desirable for me to finish. So Trubbish was definitely a boosted spawn that I appreciated. Anybody else excited about any of the spawns that they saw, or are you ready to move on to Sinnoh?
I wish it had been a little bit easier to grind out pharaoh seeds, but the task to do them was hatch 2 eggs, and that's
Right.
not really like a grindable thing.
Yeah.
If you're like out and playing for a few hours, like I like to do. But I did get 2 shiny Snivies like an hour apart, so that was nice.
Nice.
I got a bunch of like random shinies that weren't necessarily event things. I got like a Taurus and a Tentacool, and I got a Lillipup from Spotlight Hour. I think that's it.
Yeah, the only shinies I've gotten were a Lillipup that was not during Spotlight Hour, and I finally got my first shiny Machop, even though the community day is coming up, and that's essentially going to be worthless because
That's kind of the worst.
It wasn't
when
a
you
good
get it
man.
right before.
It must be nice to get Spotlight Hours uninterrupted. As
Yeah.
usual.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna say it must be nice to get spotlight hours on time.
Yeah.
Right.
Now DJBlaze, did you were you in the proper? I assume you were because you're in New Zealand. That you were able to take part in the makeup Snover hour.
Yeah, so we didn't get Snova. We did get Lillipup on time, so that was
okay.
right.
Did they just announce the Snover hour? I thought it had already occurred. I guess I didn't look as deeply into it as I
I
should
don't think
have.
we've had it yet, though, unless they suddenly appeared out of nowhere. So yeah, no, we didn't get that one, but we did get the Lillipup one. I mean, the event's been okay. Like it's nice to have a few extra spawns just to get a few extra some candies for those Innova starters, but yeah, not the Pharaoh seed was definitely a harder one to come by. Yeah, it would have been nice to see some. Didn't see a single Scraggy around, and none of the other random ones, rarer ones as well. So it would have been nice to see at least have a chance to get those.
Okay, I'm looking at the update now, and it says Monday, January 11th, which I guess it's right now from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. is your Snover hour. Has that already passed?
Yeah, DJ missed the.
Did we just make you
like
miss
2
it?
hours ago? Because Cricket just finished hers.
Oh no! Oh man, I feel like a horrible person now. We should have led with that, and you could have made your graceful exit to farm some Snover.
Well,
that's right. I'm away on holiday anyway, so screw it. I get a beach. I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you get to miss all these Snover redos, but at the cost of being able to go out, be in the world, because your country knows what the hell they're doing with this COVID thing. So, which one do you prefer?
Yeah. I'll take this.
Yes, sure thing. So we are moving on to the Sinnoh event starting tomorrow, 10 a.m. local time, or Tuesday, 10 a.m. local time. I guess we're all kind of operating on different dates right now, but we are going to see Wild Turtwig, Chimchar, Piplup, Bidoof, Cranidos, Shieldon, Combi Beazle, Drifloon, Glameow, Purugly, Hippopotas, Skorupi, and Snover. Kind of what you would expect. Those are the wild ones. Eggs, Kricketot, Badoo, Cranidos, Shieldon, Bronzor, Bonsley, Hippopotas, and Krogunk. And from tasks, we're going to get Turtwig, Chimchar, Piplup, Cranidos, Shieldon, and Buizel. We're going to get Shiny Buizel, which I know is going to be the draw for the non-PvP folks. Which of these spawns are you hoping to be able to farm? I've definitely heard Cranidos for raiding. Does anybody need to farm any of these for actual PvP purposes?
I'd like a better shiny Toxicroak, so I'll look around for shiny Krogunks. I think
You want the shiny Flex, but that's all.
Well, I have a shiny one, but it's got horrible IVs.
Right,
like
you want a shiny PvP.
the worst
Flex.
you could get. Yeah, a shiny PvP one would be good.
And I know I will be I doubt it'll be that difficult. It'll probably be a pretty common spawn, but I will be very happy when I can get my Shundo Drifloon maxed out for Ultra League. So I will be trying to get those last few XL candies in there. And I guess the Snover spawns continue, but I still need them. So that's probably where I'm looking. Anything from the rest of the crew that you're excited about actually farming or hoping they are plentiful?
I mean, I guess Drapion candies would be cool. XLs. I don't know if that's ever going to be viable, but you never know with this game. So,
right.
Scroopy probably isn't going to be common, but we'll see.
I guess it will also be interesting to see whether they up the rates of female combi like they seem to have done in certain times when combi is out, like when it was first released and during other events, but otherwise that could still be difficult to get usable ones from. Pokeminers has released or has indicated that along with the Gucci clothing that Max has decried as a botched attempt at a promotion, that we should soon get legendary and mythical mass transfers, which sounds a little dangerous, but and probably
that was long overdue.
I mean, it's overdue, but probably not as demanded as the event mass transfers that everybody wanted to be able to mass transfer their hat Pikachus and the like, except for Ethan.
Yeah, call it what it is, the Pikachu transfer. It's like, oh, the event Pokemon. Oh, well, this one with the bow, this one with the ribbon, this one with the top hat, that's fine. But damn these Pikachus. Damn them to hell.
Right.
I love Pikachu. What you say?
Yeah, so I mean,
I really wish at some point they'd give us like an actual event storage box, because why do I have to keep all these damn Pikachus?
Right, just like a collection box where you can just kind of file them away, say I was there, put the sticker in the book, and not actually use the thing.
Or make it where it's I can dress up my Pikachu and only Pikachu. So that was just kind of like, or these other Pokemon that have the bows. Like, all right, like was it Kirlia or Kilia, where it's like, all right, you can put the top hat on any Kirlia now. You've unlocked that costume for just that Mon at that evolution stage.
Let's be careful that we don't give Alyssa too much power to be able to put bows on any Mon that she wants to.
At this point, Alyssa can have all the power with all the stickers and all the ribbons and all the bows, because GBL isn't even working. At least let one thing work properly and let it be fun for someone.
They also said in the push that there is mention of some level of egg transparency where they're going to tell you what can possibly be in them, but the feature does not appear to be completely transparently fleshed out in the mine. But I'm anticipating that it's going to be kind of like the GBL encounters where you can just kind of tap on the egg and say it could be any one of these things, but I'm not getting my hopes up that it's actually going to be what we get or what we need to get, which is some actual odds disclosure and loot box transparency. But anybody think that we will actually get more than what we got out of GBL with just the list of things that could be in the eggs? I'm not holding that up.
I mean, that egg, that transparency thing, that's a whole other conversation. But I am very surprised that they've still managed to get away with that. But it would be nice to see at least some kind of odds on of what it could be. It'd be interesting to see how they'd implement that though, and whether this is they go through with this within and actually implement them to the game or not, or whether it's just something they're going to test out.
I mean, they'll probably test it out on you guys. It seems to be who gets the test most.
Well, yeah, we get the terrible tests, but they give the good ones to Australia. So depending how this goes, it depends whether the Aussies get it or we get it.
Now, I'm assuming that this has been a dynamic that other games have certainly had to deal with. Maybe not super transparently, where you could speak to exactly what they did, but a lot of these esport games probably have to deal with the sort of legalities or the contracts with the stores that they sell stuff through in terms of the loot box disclosure. Do you see that as being something that eventually Niantic is pretty much compelled to do, and that it actually is important to the development as an esport, or do you think it's more just a public relations thing where they really need to do it to keep the customer base happy? Maybe.
I mean, it's a tricky one because Niantic's hidden it very well within their ecosystem. So it's not quite as blatant as like loot boxes are, or even EA's straight up gambling mechanics that they've got going on in some of their games. And again, that's something that's slowly coming through. There's places in the UK and Europe, that are starting to outlaw the loot box thing and saying that these things have to be shown. Even I've had this conversation before with like the censorship bureau and stuff like that within New Zealand, and gambling in video games in New Zealand is not actually it's not a category for rating. So any kind of and that's just in New Zealand, and I know in the UK gambling is it can be a category so that they can base age restrictions off of that, but in New Zealand it's actually not, which is disturbing.
Right. Yeah, I think that the international nature of a game like this, just the inherent international nature of it, makes me feel like they're going to have to eventually kind of cater to the not least common denominator, but like the most restrictive laws, kind of like so many websites have had to deal with the European Union privacy stuff, and so many U.S. Manufacturers, their standards are driven by California legislation because it ends up being a lot more restrictive than what we do throughout the rest of the country. So I would think eventually that the same will be true with this, and I assume that they're just trying to at least show some measure of good faith that they're going to disclose something before somebody successfully litigates something against them and makes them pay a lot.
And I mean, the movement in Europe is starting to catch on, and like they, legislation's already slowly getting put into place. They know loot boxes are gambling. We all know it's gambling. I mean, we know video games, especially the mobile games, they explicitly use that the gambling psychology to make people spend more money on their games. Like, this is a known fact. But because they're games, and because it's not, they buy, whatever, poker coins, which themselves are not worth, the poker coins themselves are not worth money, but you buy them with real money. So, there's all that kind of things, the way people try and, the way that game developers and publishers especially, because it's mainly the publishers that do this stuff. The game developers, they never go making a game thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to monetize this. That's the last thing on their mind. Most of the time you kind of hope they just want to make a good game. But, publishers are like, right, we want money, so how can we monetize this, and how can we get how can we, basically get people hooked on spending money within a game? And, it's something that, legislation's always been behind on this thing. And again, as you said, like, something that's worldwide, you're going to have different rules. There's 190, 200 odd countries in the world. Each single country is going to have slightly different rules on how things go. So, it makes it very difficult within an international market to try and figure out. It's like, right, what can we get away with? What can we do? What can't we do? We can do this here, but we can't do that there. So what should we adhere to? And you'd kind of hope that keeping the players' interests, at the forefront of things would be the way that you should theoretically go forward. Companies don't always do that. Again, I always come back to EA because they are the epitome of
for sure,
of just the worst. And the fact that they, loot boxes are surprise mechanics. Who the hell are you trying to kid? But but that's just it. That's that's kind of the nature of some of these publishers out there. And so, Niantic's running a pretty fine line with their egg system. I would like to see them, change that up at some point. And but again, they're out there to make money, and I think that flies under the radar enough for them not to have a worry about it. It's not a straight up loot box. it is a well-known mechanic within the game. So, well done for them to be able to sneak that one in there.
And it's no coincidence that eggs are the greatest chance of getting XL candies.
Right,
exactly.
absolutely.
If you do raids, fat chance. If you catch them, they've got to be weather boosted to have a decent chance. Hatch them, guaranteed to get XL candies out of the pool, but is it the one that you want? Nope. Give me $1,000 and maybe you'll get the ones that you want, and you'll get enough of them to max something out. So it's definitely not a coincidence there. So
yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, with that adder mechanic as well, like that's why I definitely think it's come to a point where they need to address it, at some point. Otherwise it is a slippery slope, that they're endeavoring on.
And how much do you think that games in general, do you think that there's a wide ability for video game makers to monetize their product in terms of things that deviate from this mechanic these days? It feels to me like there's several channels of monetization that the video game companies seem to fall into. Most of them seem to be loot box. Some of them will base it on actual sales but more so like DLC kind of sales. But like most of the time it's not flat, buy our game and it's over. It's like there's subscription models, there's battle pass models, there's cosmetics, like all that stuff seems to be where the money is made. Do you think that if the companies were truly to have their feet held to the fire in terms of loot box mechanics, that they would still be able to find a particularly profitable model in esports?
I feel something's got to change. With the way things are going, the whole battle pass system and everything like that, it requires so much time and effort. And you've got, if you want to enjoy like different games, and you go into a battle pass for each and every one of those games, you're spending basically all your time just trying to grind through battle pass to make sure it's worthwhile the purchase of it. And it's getting to a point where like if you play, if you want to play Destiny, Call of Duty, and let's say like a mobile game, maybe like I don't know, just like any game, like if you have 3 different battle passes, you have to spend so much time just to do those things. So it's kind of gone away from you could enjoy playing all these different games to now you basically have to focus on 1 or 2 games. And whether that's sustainable or not, like I don't really think it is. Like you get somebody who'll play that game for a while and then they'll get burned out and then they'll move on to something else. And they're trying to find ways to entice people to come back through. And the most effective way to get people to come back through has always been DLC content. That's always seen games come back from the brink, or games like all of a sudden become good again, or games that have been released that have been absolutely terrible, and then add a new DLC, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, this game's actually really cool now. And that's I still think releasing game content and having that for sale is far more effective than the whole loot box system and the whole battle pass system, because those things, loot box system, it's chance, and the battle pass system is just something that just eats up your time. And as gamers, like we don't want to grind. Who has the time to grind out 4 or 5 different games? You can do 1, maybe 2. At the like a working class person is only going to have time to maybe grind out 1 or 2 games, and that's it. So I definitely think the system, it's coming to a head where it's no longer sustainable, and game developers and publishers especially need to find new ways of monetizing things, because I don't think the way things are going forward, it's sustainable.
Yeah, definitely. I think that they need to change their model for sure. Niantic isn't really implemented anything like that, so that's at least nice. Like no battle pass. There has been, I mean, obviously you have the GBL and like the rewards that we get for hitting rank 10 and stuff, I guess. But as far as like as far as battle passes go, we don't really have like a
Just the premium pass for the different rewards, but that's a set by set basis.
exactly. That's like the only really thing that we have. That's the only like comparison we can make to a battle pass, and it's not really that even like much of a comparison because the premium track just gives you more in-game rewards. Like it gives you more of the things that you would normally get just by grinding. Whereas a battle pass in like Fortnite would give you actually like exclusive items, and you can't ever get those things like in another season or whatever. So I tend to think that those systems are gross. DJ mentioned EA. I think that it's absolutely repulsive that EA does that in their games, and I don't enjoy playing their games purely off of that. Like I used to be super into Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront, and they did that to that game, and I stopped playing. Yeah, I stopped playing Battlefront because that is just actually gross. But yeah.
Well, I just found out that Niantic actually thinks that New Zealand is the last time zone in the world. So it makes sense on why you guys never get your events on time. You guys actually get them last because you're after Hawaii. So that's Niantic logic and how they release everything based on their HQ time zone. Like didn't you guys get like 3 hours less than everyone else when they release like the 1 p.m. event stuff? Whereas like like Worldwide Ho-Oh gets released at 1 p.m. PST, and you're like, okay, and it also ends at like I forgot what time zone, and it was kind of like you guys got gypped like 2 or 3 hours, something like that.
I've kind of lost track of how many times we've been gypped.
I'll just step in and say that the Jiggly Network does not endorse the use of the word "jip," but I understand it's well, it's
all
well
right,
worn.
Yeah, we've been screwed over multiple times.
There we go.
I think Tara should probably come up with a list of how many times we've been screwed up. But yeah, it has happened. At the same time, we do sometimes get events earlier. And so sometimes we are the start. For Go Festival, we definitely got that earlier, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, if anything bad happens, we know first.
But so with all these things happening or not happening or happening poorly for your zone, and sometimes I was gonna say Aussie-landed, but for Australia, like, why do you keep playing the game? Is it just purely because of the community aspect? Because the game doesn't function. Like what keeps you going?
Community aspect is definitely one of the big things. I mean, I can't speak too much to it because I didn't arrive back in New Zealand smack bang in the middle of lockdown. So like the community I do know mostly from online, but I've managed to go out and meet a few of them. Like now that we're allowed to actually go out and about, and so that's the community aspect has always been one of the big things that have kept it going along. And also just love of Pokemon too. There's always a thing too, but I mean, yeah, it's probably I know for me, like the thing that keeps me going with the game is definitely the community, and just for the love of Pokemon. But for other people, like I'm not really sure. Chat, help out on this one.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, with these loot box like egg things, and the unholy alliance with GameStop. It's just a matter of time before the Thanos that is Niantic gains the other toxic gaming communities, or like they're going to partner up with EA to try to push it into esports, whatever, and then they will just like it's just going to be full blown just Armageddon for the rest of us.
Oh, I would love to see how quickly it would go downhill if they partnered up with EA. I think we could take bets on how quick that would go down.
And then they'll partner up with FIFA to like every soccer stadium is where they'll hold IRL events, and it'll just be the unholiest of unholies.
The final thing I know, without giving short shrift to the Gucci thing, if Max really has more to say, but that's obviously not too PvP related, is that the final thing in the push, according to Pokeminers, excuse me, is something called Poseidon, which is supposed to somehow relate to anti-addiction additions to the game, which really ties into all this in terms of both gambling and sort of the Pokemon gameplay style as a whole. Have you ever, AKADJBlaze, heard or seen anything that has been implemented in games that's been described in that way, in terms of like explicitly being an anti-addiction addition to the game? And can you imagine how that might be implemented?
That's actually the first I've heard of it, but it's depending how they implement it, because, you know, any type of collection game can inherently, you know, become an addiction. You know, there's definitely, you know, there's definitely psychological, you know, precursors and stuff like that for within that to become an addiction. So it's hey, maybe for once Niantic might actually be looking out for the players. That'd be kind of nice to see. Within other games, you know, implementing that kind of stuff, most of them are too busy trying to deal with their communities and trying to deal with that toxicity side of things. Most of them will stay clear of the addiction thing, mainly because they know that the addiction thing is what they want, because that's what's going to make people spend more money, and they don't want to lose their, you know, their whales. So yeah, this is. I'm sure there's been other games that have done it though, just not one of the none of the big ones I can think of off the top of my head. But you know, it's, if they are looking at implementing something like that, then you know, that can only be a positive.
Yeah, I'm very, very interested in what exactly that would look like, and I will be the first to say that I try, like I think Max does, to really kind of look at the holistic approach of what Niantic does and not give them too much blame or too much credit for any one decision, because it's all kind of a web. But this would be one decision where if they actually implemented something that was significant against their own monetary interest, I would be the first to just, like, you know, shout to the heavens how great that decision is. I think that it's much needed for many reasons, both because of the ethics of it and how I feel about the game, and I think potentially it would take some of the edge away from like the desire to obviously spend money on the game, but even like some of the other things like spoofing and botting and those things, because if maybe they lower caps on how many mons you can catch in a day, or they give you a cooldown period where they're just like, okay, grinder, like, you know, you can't just keep doing this, or, you know, I see you there with your or phone rocker, and like, you know, you can do that for a bit, but like at a certain point we're gonna put the clamp down on that, because we realize that none of this is like actual real gameplay activity. This is just like people kind of working around the edges. So I will be very thrilled if they actually implement something effective, but just from a concept, it sounds like an unbelievably difficult idea to tackle, and I'm wondering what it will look like.
I mean, I can see it being more of a cosmetic thing rather than something substantial, but hey, if it's something that is substantial, then definitely hats off and all applause to them for actually trying to push something like that through. But yeah, we'll just need to wait and see what it actually ends up being.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they could do other things as well, like you've seen on more recent versions of Android and I believe iOS, where the color changes in different ways based on time or something like that. They could make the game like less casino boom in your face kind of appealing to play if you play for like a certain amount of time, where like you're just aesthetically not drawn to it in the same way. They could do a lot of things, but I can't even imagine where they're going to start. Anybody else have
I mean, is it to wait and see what comes up?
As a psychology student who surely is well educated on this, Ethan, do you have any thoughts on what kinds of things they could do in the game to put in an anti-addiction sort of measure that would be a good starting place?
They could start by reducing the catch cooldown, or like making it so you can only catch a certain amount of Pokemon per day. But then that would like make a whole bunch of people mad. I feel like so.
One thing. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, sir. What's your next one?
You know how we were talking about those specific instance, like because of the nest being all screwed up?
Mm-hmm.
What if they make it where you get a special instance for community day? Because that's like a big spoof for payoff, is that you can do a 24-hour community day. So in order for you to not to kind of take that away, each account gets one community day box, like incense or whatever, and that's for free. And then if you wanted to, you could pay for like the um, community day incense theme thing, so that way you can get the increased spawns of you using your own incense, and you can pay for that additional like DLC thing there. Each account only gets one. You can crack it at any and it will last for 6 hours or whatever, how many hours that they have for community day. Because when things go back to normal, then you have 3 hours or 4 hours, whatever it is, but you have 6 hours incense you can crack at any time. So that way, if you're working like, it's too early for me, or it's too late, or I want to have it early in the morning so it's out of the way, me and the fam can go get breakfast, we can hang out, do whatever, and then I can knock it out early when it's nice weather, and then we can stay at home when it's colder or when it's too hot or whatever. You can pick when you want to do your 6 hour spread, and each account only gets limited to one. That will nerf a lot of things, because 3 times dust over 24 hours and it is insane, and then you get all the shundos or whatever. So like you get locked into your region and you can do something like that, and you added money aspect to it, because trying to so like that's one thing that they can do to kind of level the playing field and all that stuff. But the problem is, if you nerf or you try to balance out and take into consideration all these like these cheating aspects of it and all that stuff, then you're going to hurt the people that are trying to play free to grind, or the people who are you're going to make a bigger grind for a lot of like the other 90% of the population. So it also does come down to the community kind of having to reflect on itself and understand, like, let them play that way, then just ignore that. Okay, if like they're cheating to get an edge, right, and they're cheating to just like play around, and same thing like with hackers and all these other esports. Like you see it at the big stage, you see it at the little stage, you see it on the free to play stage. Cheaters are going to be cheaters. So if you just ignore that and you just go like, I'm going to play my game with my community my way, you can do it however you want your way, and just pay no mind to them. It makes it easier, because they're going to get more, sure they're going to have more, but they're going to anyways, no matter how much you try to balance it out. You just have to play it your way and make it easier for the other bigger portion of the bell curve. So for someone like you, Ethan, who does the grind with friends or whatever, sure, you're not going to have millions upon millions upon millions of dust as, say, someone who's cheating. But if you at least are okay with like, yeah, I can catch mons faster, or more dust gains, or more XL candy or whatever, I'm okay with that. These people who will have just tons more than me, God bless them. But with me, I'm just here with my own, and I'm happy and I'm content with my own gains and my own goals and stuff, right? Which is how you play, and you're much happier at it than somebody who is like, no, I have to have all the dust, and I have to, and the cheaters must be punished. And there's like, if you continue to think that way as a community whole, then it kind of will eat you up alive. But if you just kind of, okay, this is what they do and this is how they want to play it, fine. Just let them be, and I'll just be content with how I play my game my way. I think everyone will be happier, and at least be able to benefit from a lot more of the perks that Niantic might be able to implement. So, but I don't know if that's 100% correct, but it's just my perspective on it. So
yeah, the other thing that is kind of wild to think about is that like there's so many different addictive components built into this game just inherently, and you see the chatter in chat, which echoes most of what I hear from people who are like really into GBL, but it runs completely counter to my own mindset. And I wonder what DJBlaze's feeling is on that inherent tension of esport versus addictive and the way that it's kind of built up, because to me the way that GBL is presented, it kind of got forced into the situation it's in, where originally it was supposed to be walk for your sets, and people were like, this doesn't make sense, this is dumb, we're going to work around it, but it was still a small number of people worrying about working around it. And then you had, okay, you're no longer going to have to walk for your sets, but it's still kind of in limbo, and it's only specifically because of the pandemic. And then you have people saying it can't be an esport unless we have unlimited sets. No other game does this. No other game does that. And so it's kind of that inherent, do they want you to play as much as you can, grind it as much as you can, play it as much as you can, or do they and get better? Or do they not want it to be an esport? And maybe the idea that if they actually went to the point where they were implementing the walking mechanism again, they were putting other measures into place that were anti-addiction on the battling front, that they would kind of be sending a clear signal that they're just like, nope, no esport here. We're not doing it.
I mean, if they wanted to make it an esport, then yeah, they do need to make it unlimited. And if that was to be the case, then you limit the rewards you can get. So you get rewards for your first 5 sets. Any set after that, you get no rewards. You're just playing for rank or for whatever else. But again, since it's obvious that they're not really looking at wanting to be an esport, then having those limits and having that walking aspect that they originally were going to do, it does fit within the mold of the game. It's just like, right, we want you to go out and go do things. You still have the option of battling, your friends and stuff like that, with however often you want to do. It still doesn't take away from being able to do like live in-person tournaments and stuff like that. And again, it does try and deal with that addictive nature a little bit. And so, yeah, I think it's a little bit weird how they've had to sort of flip-flop around it because of, the pandemic and everything else. And, they do want to make the game still viable. But, they've always said at their the core idea of Pokemon Go was to go out and, go about. It's not the game to be played at home. But battling by nature, tends to be tends to be something that you want to, you don't want to be having to walk all around and then standing in one spot for hours, trying to battle. You want to be, it's easier to be somewhere, sitting, especially if you're a content creator as well, and you're wanting to be streaming like your battles live. You don't want to have to walk around. You want to be, posted up at your PC so you can actually battle it. And so it's been, it's a very interesting sort of like dynamic of the game. Is like trying to find, it's like, right, do we want to, at least cater to like the content creators and allow them to be able to battle at home? Do we want to make everybody, have to do the whole go out and do what Pokemon Go is, and go out and about and do it like that? Or do we want to, do we really actually want to go the esport route? So they would have to, make it so that people can practice and can grind those ranks. Because that's, when you're in, and to get good at an esport, you do need to get, you do have to grind up the ranks. Like, you need to get to the top, the top tier to be recognized, as a top player. And the only way you can do that is by, putting in like a ton of hours and stuff like that. And you can't be limited by, only being able to do, 5 sets a day. There's obviously ways around it. As I said, you can battle your friends and stuff like that, but you want to be able to battle against other people in your rank, and so they come across too. So it's kind of another reason, kind of a tick in the box as to why it's not going to be esport, because it doesn't seem to be the way that the game's, the core concept of the game, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I've always been in the minority when I say that I actually don't want it to go that route, and that I think that it would inherently like compromise what the entire game is if they were to go that route. But I've always found it kind of an unusual dynamic that the content creators as a whole complain to Niantic about why they don't make the game more this or more that, when that's never what they said it was going to be. And obviously they throw bones here and there, but like essentially I feel like the content creation community just wants it to be something Niantic never intended for it to be, and that Pokemon Company never intended for it to be, And so even though they've gone like a certain way down the road, I feel like if they actually completely buckled to the demands of the content creating public or the battler community, that they would effectively like do damage to all the brands involved, honestly.
And it's a little unfortunate too, because there are, the phone technology and stuff like that's not quite there yet, and especially with like internet connections and stuff like that too. But you can actually stream the game, out and about, playing it the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
Like I've done that before myself as well. I used to do it a lot when I was in Korea. Like actually, it's a very complicated streaming setup. Having to use two phones.
Right.
Send everything back to your PC and all that kind of stuff. Like, if that was easier, then it actually make content creation easier too. Because when you're playing Pokemon Go, you don't actually really want to see people, content creators like stuck at home. You want to see them out and about. Actually out playing. Like where I am right now is like playing the game out here and walking around and
Right.
getting people and doing all that kind of stuff. Like that's what you really want to see is the game. But unfortunately, actually setting up stream setups and stuff like that, it's some stuff that's slowly coming up, but it's not quite. It's very difficult to do, to make a stream very good like that. So it's, unfortunately, that's not quite there yet. But it's a couple more years' time once 5G starts to roll out a little bit more. It'll be a lot more viable. But it is very very interesting to try and see that content creator sort of dynamic and having people playing at home versus what you kind of expect the game to be is, people playing outside.
I can't even count the number of times when I first started streaming the game before the big wave that like people would just stumble into chat and their first inclination as soon as they saw me playing Pokemon Go, sitting in front of my computer, was to shout at me and tell me I was a spoofer. How are you playing it on your computer? How are you streaming it? And it's just crazy how far we've come from the point where like everybody assumes that you can't do anything to play the game stationary, to like that's the only way that is really common anymore, and that everybody understands it for the most part. It is a crazy upside down world we live in. So the version, what is the version that we are on now? It got pushed out and forced recently. We're sitting on version 1952 on Android and whatever the equivalent is on iPhone. I know that it's been an abysmal game product in terms of actually playing and grinding the game, and I know as a general matter people have been complaining about lag more than usual, but I don't know, are there functional issues in the game from a PvP standpoint that some noob like myself wouldn't understand, Ethan? Like, are there things that are obviously going on other than just the instability of the game when you're grinding? I know we've got the thing with the egg hatching animation coming up at inopportune times and hanging the game and tapping the wrong place and hanging the game. Is there anything going on the battling side, or is it all just the usual subjective servers are bad kind of thing?
I'm sure other people in chat can attest to this too, but I've recently gotten really bad lag with or just it's the queuing system. It seems to be broken because this isn't a first time either, but I'll press a Pokemon to like sack swap, and then it won't go because
Right.
I'm like mid move, I'm
Right.
mid charge move,
and then it comes through
after
and
then
that.
it queues in.
Yeah, mine's done that as well.
So I've noticed that, and that's really frustrating. And I had that kept happening in a couple matches today, and that's made me mad. But other than that, I think it's just the same old buggy game that we've had.
Right. But I mean, even that alone, if that bug is specific to this version or the iteration of the game we're on right now, it's like I can only imagine the impact of that if it were an esport kind of situation in a tournament, if like just the update gets forced or it's not forced and some people are on one version, some people are on another, and like it's forced for completely non-PvP related reasons, but it's still linked in that way. And it just seems like that whole dynamic of the Play Store / Apple Store forced updates is just a broken mechanic in terms of any esport. And I think that we kind of spoke to that earlier with the idea of like having a different patching system. And I just, is there such a thing, DJ, as a mobile game that maneuvers the patching system in a better way that you could model it after?
I mean, there'd have to be. Like, I don't know specific ones out there, but you're not going to get, in the middle of if they were to do an esport and like run tournaments and stuff like that, they're not going to release a patch at the start of a tournament, or in the middle of a tournament, and then say like everybody's got to revert to that because it's going to change too much in the game. I think the biggest thing with Pokemon Go is the fact that it doesn't have dedicated servers, and that's always one of the big things when it comes to having an esport as well, because the game's running off basically your direct connection with somebody else. That's kind of that fundamental problem. Trying to make that go as smoothly as possible, which is why we always have desync issues and lag issues and stuff like that too, because you're going to have one person, somebody's got like they might have a great connection battling against somebody who's like stuck on 3G crap in the middle of nowhere, and that game's never going to sync up properly, or never going to be fair. Whereas in most traditional esports, you're playing off a game server, and so it's the only issue is how fast your ping is to that compared to that server, and that always it creates a nice more even playing field. Whereas Pokemon Go doesn't have that, and if they were to go forward with an esport, they'd have to kind of figure out a way to fix that fundamental problem, because somebody might have a fast phone compared to a crap phone, and then so instantly they've already got an advantage because of the hardware, and that's not going to be a fair thing going forward within the sport. And so trying to find a way, like even as I said earlier on, like if they were to do the like the invitationals again, they'd really need to find a way of having the game creating like some kind of like server there that the players basically just hook directly up to, and so there's
Right.
zero ping, zero lag.
Right. Yeah. I definitely think that is the case, that they would almost I don't know whether you'd call it a modded version, or it would just be able to like exist in a certain a different state
tournament version.
Yeah, a tournament version, or just like a tournament mode. I think they'd probably be more likely to have a version, because they probably don't want users to be able to toggle that on and off and
Yeah,
confuse
because
themselves.
there are games out there that do have that type of thing as well. So they've got like a specific LAN client that they'll use for their tournaments. Usually they don't make that available to the public, because that's you can go into that and actually get into like a lot of the assets and stuff like that too. So that's something that they're quite protective of. But you don't want to have Riot learned this the hard way. I think it was like their second year in, like their second tournament, League of Legends, and the internet cut out, and so the whole tournament had to basically like this happened during the finals, and because they weren't using a dedicated LAN client, they were using like the internet. They couldn't hold the finals, and so that basically got cut. And so after that, they learned from that, and so now you'll see that most international tournaments within esports, they'll have a dedicated LAN client, so they're not worried about internet or anything else like that. It's run from a server computer there on the spot, and so again, that that creates that fairness across the board, and you're not having to worry about internet issues, lag, or any of that kind of stuff too. So that would be if they were to go forward with, especially I think like if they were to do invitational style tournaments, that would be something they would need to do. Is like, right, we'll run this invitational tournament. We're going to set up our own LAN client here for the tournament, and then the players can jack into that, and then there'll be theoretically no lag problems.
Yeah. I am on the note of the current patch that we are on. I am really hoping that we get a new update before, hopefully as soon as tomorrow or the next day, because I cannot imagine continuing to grind with the state of the game that it's been, at least on my phone. On the iOS side, has it been as problematic in terms of just the having to restart the game as much and just unresponsiveness, Alyssa?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I grinded for like 4 or 5 hours last night, and I don't think my game crashed at all or needed any restarts of any kind. The only problems I've been having is during GBL.
Okay.
Like massive problems in GBL.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's infuriating. Mm-hmm.
All right. They did update the known issues page. I haven't really gone through and specifically looked too much at what they've put up there, but I think there was one of the issues I've had in the past, which is that basically when they try and take your money, they have a blank spot in the app, which of course is a bug they're going to prioritize fixing because it stops people from spending money with them. But it will be interesting to see if they actually fix this game for folks like myself, because I've had to restart my app. I can't even tell you how many times while grinding recently. On the positive side, we did learn this week that berry feeding in gyms can give you XL candy, which I believe, if I recall correctly, Ethan, you were telling me at a certain point, like berry feeding was not even able to give candy at all, much less XL candy, that it had been turned off entirely. So that is a welcome change, but I still have yet to see an XL candy spring forth from feeding. Has anyone had any success generating an XL candy from berry feeding?
No, the odds are ridiculously low. I think I read that they were like 1 in 80.
Yeah. And though I think that the image...
I was saying that you're going to have to hope that it's the right thing that you want to berry feed to. I guess it's bad enough that you want to try to hold on to a gym, and you have to hope that the rate happens on the mon that you want, or else you're just going to have XL candy on EVs that are like, well, that would actually be pretty good, actually, because like, you know how they do the EV gyms and then somebody screws it up with like a Tauros, and you're like, damn it, Tauros. So like you'll have one on Slacking. You'll have it on Slacking. You have tons of XL candy on Slacking because people put that in there. I guess maybe Blissey is going to be okay. You'd have tons of XL candies on Magikarp, so that would be cool for your Gyarados. But other than that, like, you're going to have all these really bad XL candies.
I hope everyone in Little Rock likes Zigzagoon XL candies.
I mean, like, I drop in my Fortress, my Shiny Shadow Fortress, just to flex, and like, it's funny, I'll drop off a Rhyperior or I don't know, like a Togekiss, and it can stay in there for like maybe a couple hours. But if I drop in that Shiny Shadow Fortress, that gym is taken down immediately. Like it pisses off the Valor and Mystic gyms so bad.
It started like a thing locally. Now the serious players get like upset if you put garbage into gyms, and they'll like start tagging people. And I just think that is too much. I'm going to put a shiny Zigzagoon into every gym I take, and if they don't like it, they can suck it.
Yeah, I used to put Chuckle into every gym. Like, I would take down a Valor gym specifically if they were being annoying about it. Because, like, okay, if I'm taking down the gym, let me take it down. Let me put in a Pokemon. Let me keep it for a couple hours. Get a couple of coins. Take it down. Fine, whatever. Take it down tomorrow, right? But they would, like, fight me on it. And I would drop off, like, a decent mon. And then they would, like, take it down. 6 people would take it down. I'm like, all right. I'd wait a little bit, maybe, like, 20 minutes. Take down the gym. Leave a Shuckle. And then I would take down another gym, leave a Shuckle. So I would try to take down all of the gyms and leave a Shuckle, screenshot it, post it in the messenger group, and be like, screw Valor. Because it's like, come on, guys, you guys have the whole city with Mystic. Like, let me hold on to one gym for like a day, please.
Yeah, I know that the very first thing that I figured when I found out that you could get XL candy from gyms is that I'm going to start a propaganda campaign to try and encourage locals who, for completely unrelated reasons, would have previously tried to make Evolution gyms, and now I'm just going to convince them, you know, that they need to bring those back for nostalgia purposes or something, and just do that, because that would seem like about the most efficient way that you could farm EV XL candy. I'm maybe not the most efficient, but the most efficient thing you could farm, just because of all the evolutions. So let's see. I know people are going to accuse me of burying the lead here, but I have not yet submitted an entry in the Kanto Go Tour contest, and I think that they are due literally, let's see, tonight at midnight Niantic time. So I am wondering what does the community have to say about what the heck Jiggly should do to submit to try and fulfill the dream of JigglyDad being an NPC in the game? What do you think I should do, Ethan? Aside from play Azumarill.
You have 2 minutes.
What's that?
You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Oh, are you gonna get cut off by Mom?
No, it's
No.
11:58 for the time for the entry.
Oh, right. No, yeah, it's. I have 2 minutes. I thought it was.
Yeah. No, it's 11:58 p.m. You have a minute now to submit.
No,
Just
but
put
it's
between
Monday. It's the Monday. I think it's Monday, not Sunday.
Well, take this 1 minute that you may have to theoretically submit for the deadline to Google search, so that way you only have 30 seconds to submit.
Monday, January 11th, 11:59 p.m. PST. So
Okay.
I'm even ignoring the fact that I don't anticipate seeing myself in the game. I was pretty confident that I was right on that.
You are right.
Anybody got any ideas for what Jiggly could do to actually make an entry that would make me worthwhile to stand out? I think Max, you submitted one, right?
Yep.
What was your theme?
Shiny. So I did kind of like the storyline of from I think it was Pokemon Red. So like I did shiny Mankey, so Primeape. I got my starter was Charmander, so shiny Charmander. And then I went into Viridian Forest and I found a shiny Weedle, so Beedrill. And then I did a little story on it. So I did those three as my team, and then my buddy was my Cubone because I found an abandoned Cubone at Lavender Town because I'm going about the journey because I figured it would be like good to like connect that to the Kanto theme. So that's where I'm in on my theoretical journey through Kanto. Is I got my Charmander to start, found a Mankey on Route 22, then went into the Viridian Forest, found a Cubone, and then like that's the story.
Any of the rest of you submitted any entries? I don't think I saw anything come across from Alyssa or Scientist.
I have not done it. I have no intention of doing it. Zagoon is not a Kanto Pokemon, so I'm not interested. I did want to take a moment to say goodbye to JigglyDad.
Yeah,
goodbye,
JigglyDad. Yes. All these things that skitter across
I'm about to head off
the screen.
Everybody, and it's been great chatting with everybody.
Thank you.
Catch you all next time.
It was brilliant having you here. We appreciate it. And where could people find you if they're looking for you? What's your you're primarily on Twitter, or what do you do these days?
I am on everything, AKADJBlaze, and you can find me basically on everything, literally.
Are you in the chat? Because then I can give a shout out on the chat. You stream on occasion.
Hold up, I'm even. There we go. I just realized I wasn't even following.
Don't worry. Once For the Battles did that to me, the seal was broken, and no one can offend me with that.
I don't think I was following until like 6 weeks into actually being.
Well, to be fair, you weren't sure about a guy named JigglyDad, and I wouldn't be either.
I mean, sometimes you think you're following somebody, then you just look at it and it's like, oh wait, I'm actually not.
Right.
I just like both in the Twitch Sings community that recently died and the Pogo community. I've heard people bring forth the same sort of conspiracy theories, like the if you all tap at the same time, you have a better chance at a shiny at a raid, or all that kind of voodoo bullshit. And people will say, oh yeah, that's just a thing where Twitch goes around and they unsub people. Like they use that as like their cover, where they're just like, oh yeah, that's just a thing that happens. It's like, it's okay if you unsubbed. You don't have to pretend Twitch did it. The mean Twitch people don't go around unsubbing for you. Oh man, but that's
anyway, y'all. Peace out, y'all. I'll be
Bye.
Next time.
Good night, man. The sunset in New Zealand. That tells you how late we are going here in the States. All right, we are pushing pretty long. Anybody got any ideas that I can throw out for a last day entry that would actually like encompass the JigglyDad theme with Kanto Pokemon? Because I have a hard time doing it, especially given that Jigglypuff is there, but am I going to battle with an Iggly, a Jiggly, and a Wiggly, or that just doesn't seem like a good theme.
You could do Pokemon that learn Sing in the traditional games.
Yeah. Okay.
So Jigglypuff.
I was gonna say what else is in Kanto that learns Sing?
Hold on.
But just do Jiggly between two Bellsprouts.
Yeah, you could do two Bellsprouts.
That would be a powerful battling team, I'll tell you. Even Little Cup would be quaking in their boots at a Jigglypuff and two Bellsprouts. They'd be like
no worse than the Rocket Grunts.
I mean, you have Lapras, and you have Lapras, and you have Altaria, and you have Clefable. These are all Pokemon that learn Sing, by the way. Altaria isn't okay. Yeah, Clefable and Lapras.
Okay.
Clefable, Lapras, and Jinx. There you go.
Clefable, Lapras, and Jinx.
Yeah.
Jigglypuff.
So I made a submission, Jiggly, and
did you?
Yeah, I did, and it was a bit ago though, and I did Pokemon that learn Ice type moves. So I have Dugong, Jinx, and Poliwrath on my team. So I thought that was interesting because no one was doing like Ice type themes.
Oh, there it is. I see it.
Yeah, no one was doing Ice type themes. So I went ahead and did that. I thought that was fun. Yeah.
What do you think in terms of what we should actually expect to see from this? Do you think that they're going to cherry pick people that they already would have wanted to be
Probably
in the game and just kind of use this as a PR thing, or do you think that they will give a broad distribution of kind of random players that don't have any pull just because they had a good entry? Because they claim to have these submission criteria that break down the percentages pretty clearly, but I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah, I think honestly people like Reversal, Trainer Tips. By the way, Reversal is now PogChamp. I don't license to draw. I just showed that for the day. So
what,
for the next like 10 hours or something like that.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like permanent. I was like, wow, that's an accomplishment.
It's 24 hours until they find their new one.
Yeah, he's
a while. So he's the PogChamp for 24 hours.
So he's gonna be our PogChamp. So yeah, so I think people like Reversal, Trainer Tips, obviously people with lots of cred, yeah, like Holly, Zoe, yeah, all of them probably.
And Legendary, right? I mean, maybe if you call yourself Legendary, then they will. Then they'll let you in. And you'll have the N pose.
No,
maybe they'll put in Asian Elkman because I heard he's legendary.
He's legendary. I'm legendary.
I hope for your sake you didn't come up with that it was stolen, because
that's mine.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But I'm the dairy to his dairy.
Oh god. Only other the two other items that I can think of on the Niantic end, collection challenges were part of the last event and are going to be part of this one. I'm not overly impressed with where they started. It seemed kind of like a bolt-on, but they did give you rewards, so I suppose shouldn't complain. And on an ordinary week, and were this a different show, I would say that one of the main topics of the week in the Pogo community was the CCO Clarique Twitter controversy, which CCO posted a video on last night. I felt pretty exhaustively covering the topic. Whether which side you choose to believe is certainly going to be something everybody decides for themselves. But I personally don't have a lot to say on the subject except watch the video if it's something that matters to you. CCO has definitely covered his position on it. I asked him if he wanted to be on, understanding that we certainly had a lot of other guests being on, and I politely declined, and we'll see him another time. But I think that this video pretty much speaks for itself. Does anybody my whole takeaway is just Twitter is toxic. Be careful what you do on Twitter. Like, none of what you see on Twitter is necessarily what it seems. Photoshop is a thing. Kind of just like having a bias toward your own team is a thing, and just try to think twice before you publicly shame somebody, whether or not you think you're being discreet about it. I mean, I know that I love my Anadactyl, and I would never speak out against her, but I think that she, if given another chance, would not have made the statements she made, and I'm sure that some other people were taking back their commentary as far as what was said. So anybody
she
else
apologized publicly,
yes,
so that was good.
Right. So I don't know if anybody else had anything to take away from that. I mean, I think it really speaks to kind of the kind of community we have, where, like, unfortunately some of it is a little bit overly driven by Twitter, and it was very quick for people to jump on the witch train after it seemed like it was coming out of the station. And I personally am of the opinion right now that it was probably either somebody trolling Clarique, or it was a complete fabrication, and I have no knowledge of Clarique as a person, so I would not pretend to make that distinction on my own. But I don't think that that CCO is part of it, and I say that as someone who I'll candidly say, like, CCO's content's not for me. Like, it's not in my vein. I think he's a funny guy, sure, but like he's basically kind of a streamer's streamer. He's not necessarily a pogo streamer, and if you like that kind of content, you like it. I personally don't spend a lot of time over there unless something very specific is going on. So, like, I'm not some CCO apologist, but I thought that he made a compelling case that honestly nothing was going on. Anybody care to wade in the murky waters other than Jiggly, who always likes to step in it?
I thought the video was good. I thought he made valid points. I think that I don't know where this all stirred up from, but I mean, I know it's Twitter. But I just wish that we wouldn't give Twitter so much credit. Like, we give it so much, we put so much emphasis on it. Like, I really don't, like, I go on Twitter and I'm just scrolling, and that's all I do. So I see what's happening, and I'm like, oh man, okay, I hope that doesn't happen. And then here we go. So
right.
yeah.
But I mean, even if you try to ignore it, whether he does or doesn't, like, I mean, there's no denying the possible power of Twitter to kind of like destroy somebody's brand if that's what somebody wants to weaponize it for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's true. Like, I honestly, like, after watching the video, I kind of felt bad for him in a way. Like, I was like, dang, that if this like if this is true, like, okay, but it probably, like, he just said all these things and it seems so convincing. So, like, I just felt bad for the guy. I honestly, like, he pointed out in this video, like, the guy in the Twitter post said that people stay for skilled content, and he said in this video, like, I don't have skill. I'm not skilled in battling. That's not what I do. I just tap, like, people come and they have fun. Like, I felt bad, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know why we just care so much. That's, I guess, my point. But
yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, is it just points to a general human tendency to be wrapped up in these things, and I just always like to put a warning label on Twitter and anything that people say about one another. Definitely believe your experiences with people more than you believe just some sort of screenshot somebody's put out there, because there's so much out there, whether even when it comes down to like politics of the day, people will basically fight each other with warring memes and pictures. And I guess the whole meme idea is ironic with CCO since he loves his memes. But I mean, people don't speak in thoughts and ideas on Twitter so much as they speak in images and kind of like cliques and tribes, and it's really unfortunate to me that so many of our discussions go down that road. But anyhow, that's Jiggly being a boomer, and unless anybody else wants to wade into these waters, which I sense hesitance to do, then we can probably wrap for this long evening. And I appreciate all of our guests, who all of which have had to depart since we began, which is not surprising given how long we go. But I thought it was a great episode. Thanks to BattleBill, and congrats on the team membership. Hope that it all pans out for you and works out well, if nothing else, for your content creation. Thank you, and congrats to MJ for his victory today in Specialist Cup. And thanks to AKADJBlaze for what I thought was a much more academic approach to talking about the idea of PvP than most of what I hear out there when people talk about it. It's kind of a pipe dream. So I really appreciate having that conversation, which I don't think you're going to see anywhere else. Anybody else got anything to wrap up for the week? Anything you're looking forward to this week other than the move changes? Anything going on? Boomer Stream is definitely skilled content. You're right, Victor, for sure. All I know is my contractors finally got permits, and they finally posted them today, and so we can move along and finally get this freaking project that I keep talking about and teasing and actually move it along the road. So hopefully I will no longer sound like I'm just making up this thing in my basement that nobody's ever seen. But I swear Jiggly's basement will soon be a studio, not a torture chamber, not some place that a creepy guy named Jiggly lures people. I promise you. All right, who do we have to raid at this fine, crazy hour? Do we have someone that's probably an Aussie or a Kiwi? I know I saw White Chocolate already in here. I'm guessing he is not on.
I didn't see. I saw Cricket.
Oh,
I don't.
yeah.
Cricket.
You can raid JigglyDad. Oh wait.
Oh.
He did hit Legend today, and I think he's wrapping up his stream, so can't raid him because he's probably gonna go raid off to someone too.
I think
Haddock is, you said.
Well, there's Haddock or Brown. Either of those. I don't know which one you want to choose, but Haddock or Brown.
White Chocolate got off. We're not talking about your personal bedroom antics, White Chocolate. We're talking about.
I don't think I've ever had the pleasure of raiding Brown Baller, and he's been a longtime faithful community member. So I think at the very minimum I owe him that. So let's send off to him. You can tell me how awful I am for this being the first time I've ever raided him off stream, Ethan. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks for being here. Come back throughout the week for Jiggly's random incoherent thoughts and developments. Tomorrow I'm sure I will be on rambling about the moveset changes with or without anybody else, but I bet Ethan will come with me.
Probably.
All right. Good night, everybody.